Exactly. I literally, anytime I look at that footage, that's what I see. Like in my head, I just hear that sound, and I'm just like,
Of course, Gene is here.
of course, is here. Hey,
Gene,
Gene.
listen to who I got now. He's really here.
It's not the automated voice that you had before. So
Yeah, I
glad
just
to
I just
be
had
here.
you just saying Ifalna wrong on repeat, and then like all sorts of Jack Quaid jokes.
I'm gonna get
Those
I'm
Jack
gonna
Quaid
make.
jokes really ooh.
What musical instruments do I play? I use I don't play a particular instrument. I do use some programs to make music sometimes. I use Ableton to do that stuff, which is super fun. I haven't made anything in a really long time though. Ever since I started like the YouTube thing, I haven't made anything. But like right before any of those videos were made, I was fucking around with it. I have no musical background. I was just like, I want to play like a musical instrument, and picked that up. Got some sound font stuff. Made some 8-bit songs. Which, by the way, if you listen to the end credits of each video, that is a song of mine that I used because I literally couldn't think of any other thing to put in there. So just some random chip tunes.
Chip tunes are good.
Dude, they're balling. They're fucking amazing.
I agree.
I can't stop listening. I don't know what it is, but like that's. I hate to like. My girlfriend comes up to me anytime I'm like listening to music and writing, and she tells me like, "Do you only listen to like SNES soundtracks or video game music?" I don't know where that habit just got picked up recently, like it within like I guess it's been just this year. And that's all I've been listening to. Like I haven't touched like regular music unless I'm in like the car or something like that.
But are you ever even in the car?
We don't talk about the guitar because
I
that
said the
identity
car.
is
Are you ever in the car? Do you
the
even
car.
drive? I don't even. You don't leave your house.
No, I don't. I ride my unicycle here and back, and then that's all. That's the end of it. No, I drive. I just don't drive as much as I used to now. So
That's fair.
my job and everything like that like was pretty local for the most part. There were times where it was like a little farther away. I know that that's like not the situation for like most people, but I had like a couple of pretty close jobs when that was a big. But anyway, yeah, dude, you know what, Gene Garcia? What is his what is his Twitch name?
Yeah, let's figure this out.
I don't know.
I'm gonna. It's Jack Quaid, all one word.
Really, is that it? Okay, look at that.
But don't pretend like you don't know this.
I mean, it's nice to see my apartment from a different angle.
He's very adamant about the boys getting Fortnite skins.
You know what I should do is I should if this YouTube thing picks up anymore, I'm gonna ask him to like sing a theme song. That will be uh the peak of this joke.
Whoa. Jack Quaid also has a brother and sister in real life.
I don't know anything about that.
You guys have so much in common.
Yeah, we are almost like the same person. It's weird like that though. There's been a lot of things going on with Final Fantasy VII, and it's something I didn't even address in the last stream that we were or that I was doing.
Yeah.
But like the whole booth thing, that's a fun thing.
What? What are you talking
When
about?
the booth where everybody is in the booth, like Cloud, Tifa, Sephiroth are all in the same booth singing the same song in the same booth. They're doing their like recording for part 2.
Okay. I I know what you're saying now. Um,
And then they were like, "Hey guys, like the trailer's dropping."
yeah,
We wish,
we
but
wish.
doesn't definitely
So,
definitely not
okay,
the case.
so for here's what that means in like people words. Um, I'm sorry. For our listeners, uh, I sent Sleepezi some complimentary moonshine, and he's about half in to the bottle. So
And
this is going
that's
to be a
correct.
real fun stream. Um, no, so there was a little bit of, I guess we'll call it news. On Reddit, Roy the Great noticed that, and Roy the Great is is generally just good content guy, like on Reddit. He's like, Reddit is his domain. Like if you want good Reddit info, you're gonna you're gonna probably see a Roy the Great post.
If you've seen a YouTube video, it is the birth of Roy the Great's genius
Yeah,
that has
and
spawned it.
yeah, and he like he rarely gets credit, but he just made an observation that both Britt Barron and Erica Lindbeck uh, tweeted recording studio pics, um, and they both happen to be in seemingly the same studio at around the same time. And there's really nothing else that they've worked on together besides Final Fantasy VII Remake. And Britt Baron is the voice of Tifa. She's also on the Netflix series Glow, which was recently canceled despite good ratings, and just canceled because of COVID. And there's a big movement online to try and get a third or get a fourth, either a fourth season or like a movie that concludes the cliffhanger of the last season. It's a really good show. It seems like it wouldn't be based entirely on the premise, um, but it's actually just brilliant.
What was the name of the show?
Glow,
Oh, right. Yeah. No, I've
yeah,
heard about this.
glamorous
That's
ladies
so
of
weird.
wrestling,
Yeah,
and
it sounds like a great idea.
yeah,
Honestly, like I was like, oh, that's actually a show I would watch.
oh yeah, and it was based on a real television show in the 80s, and so and this whole fiasco associated with that. The um, other person that we mentioned, Erica Lindbeck, that is the voice of Jessie. So of course, immediately everybody is speculating that that is very significant. But how significant that really is, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, um,
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on that one, and I
you're
think
all
that
in. It,
that's
like we're gonna see Jesse alive in the golden saucer. That's what you're.
I'm I'm like that's the one thing I don't really have much of a stake in, I think, because I don't know, like is it if that's the case it's fine, and if it's not then that's also fine for me. Like there's a part of my it's going to be telling if she's around. But for now, I'm not thinking that far ahead, I guess.
I hear what
Just
you're saying.
wondering.
Yeah. Like you know, the I'm a little. I guess I'm a little sensitive to all the criticism, and so part of me is like kind of odd into some of the criticism. But one of the things, um, one of the things that I think people are worried about is that if nobody's dying in this thing, is it Zareth gonna live? Like, and and that's I think the Aerith dying is like so holy to the experience. And as soon as I unpause the game, you'll see her corpse getting lowered into the water. But the fear associated with the game is changing so irrevocably if all three of them survive somehow, and I I personally don't really care that much about those characters. I never did in the original. I don't believe anybody was truly sad when Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse died in the OG. And if they did, they spent way too much time going over the 2 or 3 lines of dialogue each of those characters had. It just was not a big deal.
I don't know. I think that from the perspective of somebody who played the game and I don't know, I can see how people could have gotten invested in them to a degree. I don't think that they were the most invested characters. I think they definitely try to make that a little bit of a harder hit in this game for sure. I would. It's miles different in that regard.
It was maybe 1 or 2 playthroughs before I realized that Jessie was a girl. No
Nah.
joke. Yeah, it just no joke. I had no. I was so detached from them.
Dude, it's polygons. It's who knows what's happening?
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows what's going on?
yeah. I mean, for real. Um, and yeah, so Roy the Great posted that, and then of course, um, Dashing David or somebody, and all the YouTube news channels immediately reposted the observation as a 30-minute clickbait video. But that's really it for that kind of noise. But Skittle, you were a sensitive little kid. That's actually fine. I think it's probably better that you're sensitive.
I was actually and those kinds of deaths in games actually do kind of affect me pretty hard depending on where my perception. I definitely
Yeah,
get lost when I play games like that, where it's just you're oh that character's cool and oh he's being nice, and it's I'm so open to the deception of when you talk to Wedge a little bit, and he's looking out for Cloud a little bit, and you're just oh, this guy's a really nice guy. He's just looking out for this guy who's just not opening up a lot. And it's
sure, yeah.
when those kinds of people die, I'm just oh my god, I can't take this.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you. So I don't know. Maybe it was just during the first half of the game, I was
It also goes by quick.
a sociopath or something. But um, I will tell you that I remember feeling real weird when Kate Sith died and he didn't even die. It was just his puppet body. I had weird feelings because he's so dramatic the way that he's all, don't worry about me, and then the music that's playing in the background is it's it's played up like he's sacrificing himself, and I remember feeling feelings during that. I was this, why is this sad? I don't understand,
But you were feeling it a little bit.
it was, and I think when you get back there and when you get to the Temple of the Ancients in your playthrough, you're gonna have the same feelings.
I think I might. I'm
And
not gonna lie.
it just cracks the door open a little bit, and you're like, and then also you're just like, what's happening in the game right now? Like Cloud just like was beating on Aerith, and the Aerith like went away, and now we're gonna like try and find Aerith. The party's strangely cool with my random act of violence. Like, what is happening? And then so you're in this bizarre emotional state. Like the pacing from that point until the point when 12 feet of steel enter your favorite heroine's back. Like it's a very well paced thing. Oh, hey, Darth Aces, how are you?
How's it going? And also, thank you for also showing up, Skittles.
Yeah, and also Skittles, I think it's probably better that you felt those things. You know, it probably means more. It means good things for you as a human, and probably reflects poorly on me. Um,
No, it's like I think that it just depends on like what you're like connecting to at that moment, because
well,
like
no, I mean we've established that if I'm a sociopath, I don't really care what you think about me, anyways. Right now, you can like it, you can not. No,
I
I
think
know what
it's
you're saying. I know what you're
I
saying.
think it's all good, but I think it's very understandable for like it's one of the reasons why the people were so deeply affected by this game, you
Yeah,
know, in general, which is also, you know,
and
I don't know.
and so just before we um go into this too, we'll kind of finish up that news. And that news is, by the way, so um we see that Erica Lindbeck is recording probably for Final Fantasy VII remake, but it really could be a few things. Um it could be that we've got DLC coming. It could be flashback sequences. And then also there's this. Erica Lindbeck is a very good and very versatile voice actress, and she could very easily be playing another voice in the game.
For sure.
Um, the It could be a coincidence, but the VA for Kyrie was also seen in a recording studio. It was a different recording studio, but I think she lives in a different part of the country, and so it's not unheard of. And actually, somebody did some fishing and found out that the recording studio she was in looks the same as the recording studio that she recorded her voice work for remake. So it
Mm.
does look like we've got some more Kyrie stuff coming. And it could be whatever. It could be like we're going through, you know, Midgar and the events of Midgar as Zack in flashbacks, and that's what they're there for, or something. Who knows? It could be
Wouldn't
a
it
variety of
be
things.
so strange if like Kyrie just dropped off the face of the earth at this point?
It'd be really upsetting because then I wouldn't feel like the kids are in fact all right.
Not all right, in fact. Completely the opposite of all right.
Um,
You know what? That wouldn't be such a bad idea, would it be, Gene? A kids are all right. That would be the easiest way to consume it, and that's for sure. Uh,
um, yeah, and uh, I believe that they the livestream.net did
has an audio version.
do an
Yeah,
audio reading of the first half. I think they
it
gave up halfway.
it sounds like a visual novel a little bit because like the dialogue is kind of like a little slower than I would. And I'm not a big audiobook guy. Don't have like a ton of experience in that. But it felt a lot slower than you would. I wanted it to be. And I'm not like they did a great job. Like the voice and all that other stuff for like some of the characters is great. Um, but it just like it was not the easiest way to digest the information. If you had time and you were just listening to it for yourself, I wasn't at the time. I was literally just trying to get through the book as fast as possible. I seriously just would like recommend people read it. But if you're interested in an audiobook version for a half of it, it's a pretty good. It's a pretty good job. They were also the people who were like making like translations and posting them like before like any of this stuff was
Before it was
ever
cool.
right.
They have, yeah, the livestream.net is probably the best. If you were to like, hey, you're only allowed one Final Fantasy VII resource, you should probably do
Yeah,
livestream.net.
it's the go-to for
It's the
sure.
go-to, and like the site is difficult to navigate. Like I will
Yes,
admit that like it's not all organized in a way. Sometimes you just like you need to have somebody essentially give you a link to the piece of information that's on that site because it's not in an index. And luckily though, the livestream.net does have an associated Discord server who is manned by straight up librarians of the livestream.net, um, who, if you generally will ask them a question, they will just like produce a document. Um, and
I
that's
will
pretty cool.
say, I will say for them, like when I started doing this, like when I started doing like because again, I wasn't like a huge Final Fantasy VII compilation guy. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know most of this stuff before I started, you
Yeah.
know, and like for and I'll just say this for like a fan base to have a place like the livestream.net is it's like a godsend for that kind of stuff. Like
Right.
people are very like courteous to like give you their time and like really talk to you about like things that you're just curious about, like lore or certain bits of information. Like they have done the work, they've been doing it for a while, and they're also just very nice to new members. I was one of them for a really long time,
Yeah.
and they were just super helpful. Uh, because also like navigating this stuff by yourself is almost like I will say is almost like impossible, because there's when you get into like the finer details, it really comes to like you're dancing over laser beams to figure out like the lore of certain things and how they go down from like a purely lore perspective circumstance.
Right.
And they've done that, and they've just talked through it all. And having like your own opinion is a great thing, but having somebody who's been like exercising that for who knows how long, and having them be like so open to talking about that stuff is just so great.
Yeah.
So hats off to them. And if you guys ever need anything like that, or if you're ever curious about anything, like I highly recommend that like you check them out. Or if you're just curious for like to look into this stuff yourself on your own time, you
Yeah.
know
And and just be warned that they're very defensive of their status as the keepers of all the lore, and um, and if you're going to disagree with them in any way, you better come correct, because they will descend upon bad information, um, like
you've got to be open to like
it's the
just
last
knowing
bit
that.
of food that on the planet. Like it's pretty nuts. Okay, so just if we're gonna move on to other remake news, we've also got what like there's two things I'm very excited about. There's a pair
Mhm.
of Ultimanias coming out at the end of the month.
I'm so excited.
And so I'm really excited to get our team of translators to look at it. Um, and then one is called the Materials Ultimania, and then one is called How to Walk Through Midgar. I thought it was a walk through Midgar, but it's literally like how does one walk through Midgar? Um, and
Fantastic.
yeah, so it's a guidebook on how to do that. Um, then and then another bit of really exciting news I think is that there is a acoustic version of the soundtrack that has been released. If you go to my Twitter, I retweeted the tweet about it, and there's some preview tracks, and they sound really cool, like so cool. Like I was astonished at how cool they sound. So I'm super super excited for that, and plan to fully utilize variants of those tracks under like enough filters that it doesn't get me sued in my upcoming videos.
That's right.
So um, it's probably not good that I just admitted that on stream, but hey,
I don't know.
it's
Who
one of
knows? Who knows what will happen?
exactly one of the benefits of being a sociopath. So where am I? What's going on right now? Okay, so this is
We're
the
at the very beginning of the game.
so
This is a non-spoiler run,
yeah,
obviously.
and whether this game is a sequel or not, Darth Aces, I don't know. It's such a weird terminology thing. People get really wrapped up in it. It's the fifth part of the compilation. Does that mean it's a sequel? Well, that would mean that the second part of the compilation, which was Before Crisis, is a sequel to Advent Children, the first part of the compilation. So obviously not. It doesn't matter what the series, what the number is. Is this happening as a result of the events of Final Fantasy VII OG? Possibly, and that would make it sort of sequential or a sequel. Um, is it also a remake? Yeah. Why? Because remake's a super vague term. It hasn't been used on enough games for there to be a baseline or rules for it yet. So it is what it is.
I mean, for something like a remake, and this is something that's actually been. I don't want to get too far into this because I also know that you want to get to the game, but
Yeah.
the that's something that's been brought up like a lot to me like lately is people in like comments and stuff like that. It's like I totally understand like where the term remake should have just been used for to sell the game that people probably initially just wanted, which was just a one for one. But for somebody like me, and this is just my own perception of things, is I love that sort of meta play on that term. So I totally get that people like wanted the game that they were waiting for like forever. You
Yeah.
know, so understandable. Like I can't be more sympathetic and understanding to like people who have actually wanted that game. But for me and for I don't know even people who are maybe newer to the series, um, without that like perspective, like it's an interesting take on an idea, as like Baby
Right.
Seal was just saying, which is that it's an interesting take on the term remake. Moving forward, it's going to be really, and for me, just so interesting to like see like where they're planning on taking it. And honestly, like, and just to like be clear, like even if this game doesn't turn out the way that people are expecting, I'm very interested to see what this game is going to do, like regardless, like
Yeah. Yeah.
if it's as bad as people are saying or if it's the best that people are trying to give this game, like I'm on for the ride
Yeah. We're in
100%.
it. We're in it to win it. They'd have to screw up so bad for
Oh
me to
yeah.
not at least see what's happening. Like even if next game is like a train wreck and I hate it, still probably play the third game. Like what is happening? You know? Um and also I'm very excited to see what weird titles the because it's not gonna be remake part two. It can't be. That'd be so lame. It's just
I don't
remake
know,
two.
it might be.
What
I
about the
don't want it to
remakening?
dive into this like
Remind?
Final Fantasy 7, yeah, Remind or something like that. I think that's already it's already covering too much. I think it's just going to be a part 2, but I could also
No.
be wrong.
No, it's gonna be
You
some
think
other
it's going to
weird
be some
stuff.
fancy
And
some
whatever the
fancy stuff?
title is gonna be some red herring.
Regenesis is a
Yeah.
great one.
Restabbed.
Dude, if Genesis was even mentioned in the title, you know how much people would be like losing their minds? They
I'd be
would
so here for it.
immediately.
I'd be so here for it. And
I'm going to
so
be the
okay.
only one waiting in line.
All right. So okay, before we get into this is the last thing. I definitely want to clear up. And all of you who are listening, Rehollander, all of you that are listening, please take this bit of information and spread it as far and as wide as you can.
Okay.
If they wanted to have Gact as Genesis in this game, they absolutely could, with no issue. They have the full rights to his character without needing to pay him. And this was expressly described. And Gene Garcia's got this. He's been in almost every mobile game. But he was particularly, he's coming up in Brave Exvius. He's going to be released in Brave Exvius. He's probably coming to Opera Omni, and then, which is a Dissidia game. And he was in Record Keeper. Like, there's absolutely no reason why he can't be in this game.
And in Smash Brothers, as Gene is mentioning, he's
Right.
absolutely capable of
Right.
most likely candidate.
Right. But that's a secret, so don't spread that.
Nomura hasn't officially released that information. He only talks to Jack Quaid about that stuff.
Yeah, so you, if you want to keep that stuff close to your chest, the stuff that isn't true in like a real world sense, only in this stream sense. But like, yeah, Gact could totally show up in the next game with zero consequence. So please, I hear that maybe once or twice a day. Oh, they're never gonna get Gact's not coming back as Genesis because of blah 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 rights. Gact is probably not coming back as Genesis because people hated it. That's probably why. Genesis may appear, but not as Gact, and it will probably be as some weird, like, kind of the way he did in this game, like just his references and stuff. So yeah. So moving on, we're about to start the end of Remake Part 1, which is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII Repenetrated.
What on earth?
So speaking of that...
Re-Chadley.
So speaking of that, Re-Dirge of Re-Cerberus. Re-Crisis, Re-Cord. Okay.
Oh my god.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
It'll happen.
Okay. All right.
Just give it time.
I'm gonna hit resume. You guys tell me if I need to turn some volume thing up. If I need to turn up me, Sleepezi, or the game if you want to like drown us out. So I'm about to hit resume. We just got done with the Harbinger fight, and we're gonna go through the ending.
All right.
And right there, of course, it didn't explicitly show whose body was getting dropped in there. It kind of phased out.
Well, this is obviously the start of the Whisper Harbinger fight.
Oh yeah, yeah. You guys are in for it.
It's hard.
I wonder if I die right now, which I don't think I can. If it takes over, if I have to start all the way over, I think I would have. Okay, so let's just acknowledge for a second that absolutely the Harbinger is emanating live stream. Like, that thing is made of live stream.
Yeah, it's 100% live stream.
Yeah, negative live stream.
And I'm theorizing for sure that
where are we?
Negative live stream is involved in that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
With that golden flower necklace.
Golden flower necklace and
Cloud.
the repeated dialogue coming up here, which is really great. I don't understand why they would use literally the same line of dialogue.
I think he just nailed it. The voice actor nailed it. Like, you have no idea what he's waiting for. Like, it could be like his sword or his dick. That's how thirsty that line was delivered.
This type of like
Sephiroth.
yeah, we have like a reforming of some version of Sephiroth here. Oh god, this game truly like I'm getting flashbacks to like when I saw this ending for the first time.
Yeah.
And how like just unbelievably like weird all of this was.
All that purple goodness.
That's right. I just love his stare right here.
Also, like, can we just acknowledge that
He's levitating like the entire city.
He's like a class 10 mutant with that,
Yeah.
like it's Jean Grey level telekinesis also.
It is very strange how much power he seems to have in this particular scene. Like more power than, I don't want to say like, because I feel like we've seen maybe a more powerful Sephiroth in
AC.
the original.
Let's finish this.
And I don't know if AC he was as powerful as he is here.
Yeah,
almost feel like
I don't know. I think the most powerful variant of Sephiroth is definitely in Kingdom Hearts 1.
Kingdom Hearts 1, of course. He was a summon in Kingdom Hearts. That's what it looked like to me, at least. So I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that lore as much. Maybe Kingdom Hearts 2 because we don't know what he is. Something that's kind of interesting to bring up is that as we're getting into this fight here, and we're doing a little settings adjustment, some loadout decisions. One of the things about AC Sephiroth is that they did a really cool thing to kind of make him look like less human or appear a little bit more alien compared to like his prior appearances. I guess because we have only gotten him in. No, we got him in Last Order before that, right? I don't know when Last Order came out. I have to check.
Yeah,
that
Last
out.
Order came before Crisis Core.
Yeah.
It was after Before Crisis.
Okay. So
Or in conjunction with Before Crisis. Before Crisis was a long release, so it came out during the life of Before Crisis.
Gotcha. One of the things that they did for Sephiroth is that they made it so that he never blinked. So it made him look like less human that way. So like his eyes are always like open looking, and there's like when he says like the line like the planet as a vessel, like he looks up and just down, and the scene lasts like a pretty long time. And I never noticed that myself. That was just something that they mentioned in an interview, but it definitely adds to like this otherworldly element of Sephiroth. And going into this game, there are moments where that seems to be the case, where he's like not blinking, which I thought would have been like one of the biggest tells, right? Like that would have been a really great visual way of kind of like allowing the player to make their mind up about like what Sephiroth they were seeing. Because as we know, there's like a Genova Sephiroth, there's like this Sephiroth, there's so many like variations of like the method in which he appears. Yeah, he does. He does blink, and there's also just he blinks more in this game than I thought he would, I guess is what I was trying to say, because once I found out that little tidbit, I kind of went back and I was like, oh man, that's gonna be like, that's the key to like some big information, and it turns out that that's just not really much of like a limit of anything. But that, such as the life of a theorizer, right? You kind of just looking at those things and hope that something hits. But I do know that you've brought this up to me several times, that Sephiroth in this fight has a lot of like moves that are from other games. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
That's pretty neat, honestly.
Well, like a lot of them are Dissidia. Dissidia actually really created a lot of the caricature of Sephiroth before even Crisis Core. like Octaslash. Octaslash originated in Dissidia, which I find
Oh, no.
fascinating.
Not this blocked scene.
Oh yeah, how am I gonna get around it?
I don't know. How are you not gonna spoil everybody? That is pretty interesting though. They were gonna include. I was just reading something about like one of like Zach's moves being included in Crisis Core, but it just wasn't included in. Yeah, I don't know what it was. It was like some storyboarded like stuff. I'm so interested to see like what's gonna be coming out of this new Ultimania. I hope that we actually get something, and that this book isn't just like
fate is not
gonna
lightly.
make things a little bit more complicated for us. But
Bring it. Here we go.
yeah, and a lot of those flashback memories are pretty interesting too. There's actually a callback to Before Crisis, one of those, which is something that I don't know comes up like randomly, where Zach in Before Crisis buries 2 soldiers that get killed on a mission, and then in one of the flashbacks that is attached to the I want to say DMW, is that right?
Yeah.
Because I get that confused with S&D all the time. But yeah, his DMW flashback actually shows the place where they're buried, because Zach puts their swords together in like a cross, like an X, over their graves, and one of the memories Zach has is of that same thing. So it's funny how like little details like that are rewarded for those who have played the compilation. It's a very odd thing, but it's actually one of the better parts of Before Crisis. His characterization, actually, Zach's characterization Before Crisis is actually really good. It's actually, again, like for such a great a game that does a lot of things right, like story-wise. Before Crisis, like is like literally the most inaccessible game other than Lost Episode, which is not worth playing for anybody. Before Crisis is like way more worth it for like lore and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. That's one of the games that I just wish would be released, because also like if like just looking at like the Avalanche characters, like Jesus, like those are fantastic characters, like, and they perfectly fit the world of like Final Fantasy VII for me. We were talking about that. Me and Otto were talking about that, and we were what we wanted to see, and you know, given the nature of. Sorry, I'm reading this Bahamut thing.
Since the time of the ancients. His assessment is a little different though.
It's kind of neat though, huh? Times of war.
Yeah.
Also, Sephiroth looks 10 times better in this, like most of the models. I would say, so much better in this. It's so apparent in this particular, especially since you go like from back to back of like CGI cutscene to like in-game model cutscene. So good looking. I won't mind square cut corners. Show me more of those models. I don't care. You did a fucking fantastic job on it.
Yeah, that's true.
When realistically do you think that game is going to come out?
Part 2?
Mm-hmm.
22.
22, do you think? Yeah, that's fine. Drop a big old trailer in 21 and then get it out the next year. I can see that.
I do think we'll actually see 16 next year, though.
I would agree with this.
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited for that game.
I'm excited that you're excited.
I'm pumped.
Oh, yeah. we were gonna look at this enemy intel.
It just looks like something that literally was like made for me to play. So I'm like dark fantasy-esque. Like I'm 100% for that. A legendary summon recreated in virtual reality. It is the manifestation of a dragon king revered by the original stewards of the planet. According to oral traditions. Sorry, go for it.
If Final Fantasy 16 ends up being like an origin story for 7, like it's about the Cetra.
Oh, shut up. Don't even put that in my brain. You know how like fucking
there.
crazy I am for that.
It's in there. It's too late. You ever notice his feet? His feet hands?
Yes. I've looked at this model too much to like enjoy looking at it anymore.
Because you're caught up on the green gem in the center, huh?
I was caught up with the way that his armor looked.
Yeah.
And some visual similarities to like other Bahamut's. It was like a big thing for me for a little bit. Joshua the Cetra. Ah, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
Not to be taken lightly, Cloud.
Shut up!
Yeah, Sebastian and I can't pronounce that name. Isai. It is close. That's Wedge's.
Let's
father.
dance, asshole.
Come, Cloud.
You just hear him say, "Come."
Let's do this.
I don't have the volume up, but honestly, all of Sephiroth's dialogue here is too cryptic and highly triggering to my brain. This is the only shot in the game I don't like, by the way. His face there, I think, is literally like the worst angle they chose.
Need some help?
I really don't like.
Oh, okay. Well, good
Sorry,
to know.
You know it.
I don't like.
Try it for me.
He looks badass in every other shot, but that like lower like his like angle, the angle of the camera, and also like the angle that they modeled his face to look, it just doesn't. It might also be the lighting because of the giant boulder that's over his head that's covering it up. Something about that isn't working for me. The weakness within, yeah. Dude, do you know like how crazy it would, like how crazy great it would be if you just had like a Sephiroth voice, like if you were like the voice actor for this dude. There was actually a con that I went to where I wasn't into Final Fantasy VII AC like I am now, but I remember distinctly being at a con of some kind, and the Japanese voice actor who played Sephiroth in Advent Children had like a panel that we were sitting in. I don't even know why I was there, but I think he said like one line, and I was like, oh man. Like, I'm not even, like, I wasn't even in love with the movie, and I was just like, this guy's, like, killing it right now.
It's nothing. I can't.
Yeah, the "Do you dream of me?" and then "all the memories" line really makes me upset. It's only because I want to clarify, like, I love all the dialogue in this game. It's just because, like, looking at it from a certain perspective, trying to glean some, some lore goodies out of it, it's too cryptic to say anything to, like, I guess, hard and concrete about it. It's good, though.
Yeah, sleep. Yeah, I remember the sleep and dream the sweetest of dreams. That is a weird line.
Which, by the way, definitely sounds like a Sephiroth that is like a Sephiroth. Because
yeah, a lot more.
One of the other things,
let's finish this.
Higher intelligence.
Kind of, or taunting and ethereal. Yeah.
Fate is not to be taken lightly.
Oh.
Shut up.
It is definitely a reference to me. I called Nomura and I told him, like, hey, like, put me in the game in the most subtle way possible.
Ride from me.
I'm waiting.
I'm also very much looking forward to the prospect of actually playing the Sephiroth. I can see that happening and me loving the fuck out of it.
Enjoy.
Oh no way, Skittle. I will watch it because I have literally not been keeping up with any Final Fantasy 16 stuff. There was things that I theorized when the first video came out, but I have not like looked into like any of the new news. I've just been keeping up with like development and just hearing that it's been going like really well. But I would be super down to watch
The
watch a
planet will
video.
claim you.
I really hope that the game is like as great as it feels like from development. So like putting it into perspective of like let's say Final Fantasy VII Remake, like there was a lot of trouble that this game went through to get to like where we are now. Like there was a lot of like red flag signs of like, oh no, like the team that was making it is no longer a part of it and they're restarting development and all this other stuff. It's just like, oh my god, like this could go like 10 different ways now. And for the most part that's kind of what happened because, you know, this game
I'm waiting.
as critically acclaimed as it is also very divisive. With 16 it's just like, yeah, we've already kind of got all of the main story stuff done and over with. All we're doing for like the rest of the development is refining gameplay, and you just have to sit there and think to yourself like, oh my god, like. And I was talking about this with Otto, which is that like that director has only been doing this MMO thing for like forever, and if you're only paying attention to like a game that has no end date and you are just constantly in charge of a game that is like constantly putting out content, constantly developing new content for it, it's crazy to think. So taking a guy who's been in like the trenches of that and be like, hey, we need this game out by next year and you just never have to touch it again, it's like that's a layup to a guy like that. It's like, oh man, like he's probably been writing other stuff, all right, like not related to this for like ever, and it's just like, oh, I'll just do this and I'll just be done. And like the production flow of that using a similar team, it's just like there's no way that game is not just gonna be like a
Enjoy.
I have very high hopes. That's all I'm trying to express, is that it seems to be going very well. So I worry about all of these guys' health, dude. Like being in that industry, like one of the people that I've been paying attention to for a while because I'm a big Super Smash Brothers player. And the director for that, Sakurai, like his hands are like messed up. He's been like, but he like works through that. Like he's a workhorse, dude. Like it's crazy how much time and effort like these people put in to like getting these games out. They really do like put their health on the line to get this stuff out. And that's, you know, for a number, like a myriad of reasons, which is fine. Like if that's what you're kind of signing in to do, like I can understand it, but like putting unnecessary like strain on people like that can also just be like completely unnecessary.
You know it.
But they do it to make some great stuff for us.
Need a breather.
Some of them do. Some of them I don't think signed up for any of that. That's too much pressure for some people, maybe unnecessary. Especially a lot of that stuff's been happening in like, you know, from what I've heard, just like a number of different studios in like the US. Yeah, it takes a lot of work to get something like this done. And also just working, like just the nature of working on a project with like, you know, however many people. It's already complicated to like head something like that and be a part of something like that. And then like if you add like a deadline or like, you know, production, like or producer, like what do I want to say? Not restraint. I was gonna say pressure, like producer pressure, company pressure on top of all of that. That's just like it's crazy that we get anything good,
That sucked.
like anything.
Let's do
It's
this.
always just mind blowing to me that anything that we see on screen is any decent. It's a miracle that these things come out the way that they do, and they can affect us in such deep ways.
No need to panic.
This is all the coffee talk. I just want to let everybody know. It's just coffee. I have not played. Is it 14? I'm
The
not thinking
MMO?
of- Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's 14. Yeah, I haven't played it. The only MMO I've ever touched is World of Warcraft, but I hear very good things about it. So I'm only excited to see what this next Final Fantasy game brings. And also, it's really nice to have a game that is like
I won't.
just
I can't
the
believe this.
opposite of what we're getting with like Final Fantasy VII. It seems like it's such a good move on their part to
No more playing
have
nice.
like these contrasting
Nothing personal.
titles. You know, we have like Final Fantasy VII game. I'm not saying it's the lightest Final Fantasy game ever, but it's definitely not as dark as people getting smushed by like boulders and like blood spraying everywhere. I want to mention something about the wing in the screen, the Sephiroth wing, that I wasn't very clear about in other streams or even videos is that one of the things about Sephiroth's wing in this scene is the whispers make up the wing of Sephiroth here. You'll see it in other transition scenes is that whispers come out of the wing, and it's weird, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what that says, but I theorize that has something to do with the idea of like memories and what I talked about in the last video. It's a very exactly, Gene. It's the time where he summons Meteor. It's just so surreal. It's a very odd thing, and it definitely shows a control over whispers, which is great. That he sort of adopted that sort of control.
Sorry I'm late.
But you know what that means for like the rest of the series, other than like it could just be like what I've talked about in like, videos or whatever, but it could be something else, and it's a very intriguing thing. That's one of the biggest things to take away from like this particular like bit that we're watching here.
Take it from here.
Also, his wing looks
Okay, up
fantastic.
and at 'em.
Fight through it.
He's looking great.
After you. Just kidding. Started.
Yeah, the memories thing is what made me the most curious about this. When I was developing the part 5, this is actually something that would come up constantly between me, Otto, and Babyseal. Is that this particular way that this scene is like structured with like all the things that are brought up in part 5 with like
Fight's not
memories
over
and
yet.
all this other stuff. It's the most intriguing element to me now, looking back at this scene. Just because it really is like a well constructed mystery, which could have 0 answers.
Yeah, it could be something like Lost, where they wrote themselves into a corner. But like everybody references Lost as kind of this high watermark for like unresolved stuff, but I think it's unfair to say that just because Lost did it, all stories will do that. Also, too, I think that, you know, again, there's major differences between what the West requires from its storytelling than the East does. Like big themes like destiny and fighting God and stuff like that. That's very standard in storytelling for not just Eastern society, but any society with tremendous amounts of structure in place. And so, like, I've heard arguments that it's not relatable, you know, the idea of destiny. And I think it's not relatable if you come from a place where it's a lot easier to breach social pressure. Like, I'm not saying that we're privileged here, but it is very different. It's the level of pressure we have compared to, not just level, but the kind of pressure that we have. I mean, the uniformity in Eastern cultures is a lot. It's there. It's a real thing. That's not a criticism of that culture, but that generally it's deficits in culture or elements of culture that indicate what kind of stories are attractive to its populace. And so things like fighting destiny and fighting God and, you know, all that stuff is in fact relatable to a lot of the population. But
I would second that, just because it's such a it can lead into so many conversations.
yeah,
It's not as limiting thematic wise as I think some people might think that it is.
right.
And like you were just saying, is that there's a massive amount of media in general that has this same sort of structure of fighting this like creator or confronting your creator, or like that relationship between like the creator and the created. It's a very like, it can bring up a lot of really interesting questions if done right. And I've seen, like off the top of my head, at least like 4 different stories, whether it's like media, like Japanese media, like in movies or games, or like television, where it's been used to its full effect, and they're very different, distinct conversations, maybe like similar for the structure of it. And this is something that happens all the time, you know, like repeating arcs, repeating stories like this. There is not, as people say, as an example, there is not a original story ever out there anymore. It's like these are all like repeated stories that we're experiencing, or like one story is taking from another. It happens all the time. But does that mean that the content that you're viewing is any less for using that structure? Not at all. Not even a little bit. I would argue that having, like in some instances, that structure can really benefit expectation as well, you know, in terms of like how an audience perceives this as like a cliche or something like that, that can be used to the full force against the audience and a false perspective. So there's a number of different things that can come from just the same story.
Do I frighten you?
And yeah, it's fantastic that way. And honestly, it's one of my favorite types of stories, just because of how like crazy some of the conversations that come up from all. I'm gonna read some of these comments here, just because. Yeah, exactly, Skittle. That's exactly what I would say. Is that it is that type of story, that defying of destiny, that is it's almost
Need some
a
help?
pretty consistent theme throughout most Final Fantasy games.
Good to go?
I
You
can't
know
speak
it.
completely to that just because I haven't played it. But from what I was actually just saying to Schrodinger here before we were like, when we were setting up, is that like looking at just 7, 8, like the original 7, Safer Sephiroth is a god. Safer Sephiroth is as close to a god that we know in this universe as of right now, other than maybe like a Minerva or something like that. Safer Sephiroth is like the closest thing that we ever see to that sort of status.
Man, I'm
It's what
too much for this.
literally the original Final Fantasy is 7
Let's
is.
dance, asshole.
So for those who want to argue that this is any different,
Deal with that.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Beg for forgiveness. Take the lead.
I don't. And by the way, this isn't a frustrating conversation to me. It's just
Here we go.
the idea of generalizing that conversation is not something that I see as
I'm not going out like
productive.
this.
I don't see it also as a very valid argument
Let's do this right.
for the media. You can not like those stories. That is a totally fine thing. If that's just like a gripe that you have, there are other stories. There are other games. And again, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a particular, how would I say it, a particular circumstance where there are other things to be very valid about and being upset, you know, and that's just mainly the way that the game is marketed. But as far as story structure is concerned, it's not something that I'm too bothered by, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never like. I don't think I know enough about the first Final Fantasies. I keep wanting to say Final Fantasy VII, but I've never seen like a story breakdown of Final Fantasy One. It's just one of those.
It's just super good versus evilly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, can also be a really great story.
Yeah.
Just something simple can also just be like a very resonating story.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
It's how you tell a story, really.
Let's finish this.
Which is half of the reason why, like, I don't know, like, time travel movies are, like, so much fun. I'm not saying that Final Fantasy VII Remake is a time travel story, but it's like, those movies don't have to be, like, super complicated to just be enjoyed.
Yeah.
If I tried to, like, go to, like, Back to the Future or whatever and, like, nitpick the hell out of it, it's just not even fun at that point. It's like, there's so many other parts of that movie that are done so perfectly that, I just rewatched the entire trilogy of that, actually. They're fucking great movies. They're so good. Fantastic movies. Interwoven with a string of fetch quests.
I like a good fetch quest every now and then.
I think the worst that I ever felt like a fetch quest, maybe this isn't a good definition for it, but Skyward Sword was filled with that kind of stuff. And that's very off topic, but that's like anytime anybody mentions one of those, I always have like a flashback to that game.
You hated Skyward Sword though.
I did. I really, it was one of the ones that I just like that I started that I just never finished. I would have probably if I was not in like the mood that I was in from revisiting the same area for like the third time and having to bring like a tub of water to like the top of a mountain for like the second time. Probably would have helped my mood a little bit, make it easier to get through. Also, I didn't really like a lot of the designs in that game too. From an art perspective, some of it was really great, and some of it was just like this just seems lazy. Which is not what I like to think about when I'm playing Zelda.
Right.
Really like blown away. Like, I love all like the villains and all that stuff.
Come on.
I'm a huge Zelda fanboy when it comes to like the original. I don't want to say the original. The Nintendo 64 one. I love Ganondorf. It's like one of my favorite villains. He's also my favorite character in Smash.
The planet will claim you.
That there's a lot of rose-colored glasses that I look back on that stuff. He is Azul, that's right. And if anybody if there's a status that I want to exert here at any time in the future, it will be to get an Azul skin for Ganondorf for Smash Bros. I will continue to mention these things as time goes on. Right in the head, Sephiroth. I feel so bad. Knock some of that gray hair off.
Here's your favorite angle.
It's so bad. Look at it.
I love it.
You like it? All right. Well,
No, I
maybe
don't. I just am being contrary. I have zero feelings about it.
I was gonna say like that's totally fine. It's just something that bothers me, and that's the same angle there, but it looks great. It's fantastic. This is our no healing easy mode run of Final Fantasy VII Remake. No, but I don't know. I was gonna ask this at the start of the stream when we were kind of talking about it, but is there a particular character? I know who's Jeans.
Don't overdo it.
I already have it in my
Nothing
mind.
personal.
Jeans.
Hold on. I'm coming.
Maybe not. We'll see. What character from the compilation is somebody that you'd actually like to see show up in Remake Part 2? I have a lot of choices, but I'll narrow mine
All good.
down. Hollander would not be
Enjoy.
I was expecting you to just drop Chadley for some reason, but Hollander is. I should have.
No more.
I was blindsided. Final Fantasy Tactics. I have not. My brother was really big into those games though.
Gotta be careful. Wow. Something.
I can understand being overwhelmed by the tutorial for that game for sure.
Tactics? Ugh.
Not your
Yeah.
not in your game. I hear the story in that is also fantastic.
It's alright. It's pretty good actually. A lot of it's cool that like there's several games with that world. I do think that's cool. Evilise is the world of Tactics, and it's also the world of 12, 14.
Okay.
Yeah. Tactics Advance is a totally different world. In fact, it's sort of like it's literally a dream. It ends up being like, yeah, that may have the weirdest. If I think about it, that might have the weirdest of all the plots.
Story-wise?
Yeah.
Okay. That's saying a lot.
It's super meta. Like, it's about like some kid who thinks this is all a dream. It's weird. I forgot about that.
I have not played any of the Tactics games, so anybody.
Tactics Ogre is good too.
Freya? That's an odd one to say. All of the people that you guys mentioned, by the way, are like I 100% want to see. So like Lizard, Cisne, and Elena, like those are all like fantastic.
Do you think maybe they'll do, instead of Cisne, they'll do the male player character from Before Crisis instead of the female character?
I would honestly just like to see everyone back, but if I had to choose, I don't know. I mean, Shotgun is also pretty popular, right? Because she was like one of the better characters. If we're just talking about like Before Crisis.
Yeah.
They should really all be in there. Like, honestly, if you're gonna do something interesting with the overworld map, like, put Turks everywhere. Like, that's like my biggest note for Nomura in Part 2, is if you're gonna do anything with the story, like, like, if you're gonna make us go do quests and stuff like that are, like, all these side, like, little things in each town, put a Turk in there. It will be, like, one of the greatest Easter eggs of all time, just to have everybody there. Yeah, all the Turks are still, from what we know, all the Turks are still alive.
Yeah. What would they name the male Turk?
I don't know. Male?
Well, like the female
Because-
Turk wasn't named Cisne, obviously.
Right.
Bro.
Mm, something, I guess you're right. They would have to come up with something more interesting. Genesis.
It'd be based on the weapon, because that's what
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is like whatever
like
it is.
Cisne was. Yeah.
Denzel would also be a neat
Fate is
cameo.
not to be
Yeah.
taken lightly.
It's also really strange. I was thinking about a scene from what was it? Episode Denzel, the animated version. When they find it's sometime after he gets picked up by
Beg for
the
forgiveness.
dude who has like all the other survivors
I'm
after
waiting.
Media Fall.
Come.
After Reeves' mother's death, spoiler alert, who is Scottish, as we all know.
Gaelic.
Gaelic, thank you.
Enjoy any time now.
They're walking and they find a kid that's been infected with geostigma. And I realized, because I didn't put it together as I was watching it then, but like looking back at it after playing a little bit of the original yesterday or the day before that, they
Gotta
are
give it my
walking
all.
where the train usually runs. They're walking on the trainway, which I was like, what? Look, like, that's so cool. Like, you only saw this from inside of the train. I think it's one of the earliest shots of the train station when they're going around in the spiral on the map that they depict. Yeah, it's super weird.
Yeah.
It's weird how those things show up, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff
Don't know about
that
me.
pops up. Like,
Good to go.
not to get too off base, but like back
Beg for
to
forgiveness.
watching AC, the final confrontation between Sephiroth and Cloud in Advent Children, when they're like having their dialogue back and forth. Sephiroth throws his wings, and Cloud performs Omni Slash. All of that is actually taking place in Shinra's office, which I didn't realize either. Like it took me like a couple watches to like figure that out. Is that they're actually fighting in a destroyed version of Shinra's office. I was like, what? Like these are crazy little like nods and hints to like different areas. Obviously, like they're fighting it on Shinra HQ, right?
You will.
So
be
it only
tried.
makes sense that that would be where they were standing, but your brain kind of,
Deal with
for
that.
me at least, I wasn't processing any of that when I was watching it. I was just trying to pick apart dialogue or
Don't
like pay
overdo it.
attention to the action, because there's a lot going on in that scene.
I see.
I don't think it was ever supposed to be taken seriously, but I guarantee you that if they wanted to drop that guy
I'm waiting.
somewhere, Quetch could be in remake still. I hate to say it, but I was a little like, I don't want to sound like judging the game before it comes out, but I'm okay with that game being like a first-person shooter. I think people were expecting like the third person for Cyberpunk,
Let's do this right.
but I'm fine with it. But the way that the game looks, I'm not 100% sold that that game is something that I would enjoy. But I mean,
It's
I
hard
don't know.
to say.
Fight's not
Yeah,
over
exactly. They've also put out like a lot of good games in the past, so like it's hard to like, doubt that they would make something
yet. I hate this.
pretty well liked, at least. But who knows? So here's what we do when we go back into playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. Okay? What you want to do is I want you all to turn to hard mode, and I want you to do the last boss rush. It's obviously the easiest thing in the world to accomplish. If I were to play this game, honestly, like I think I would probably not be able to make it even through easy mode, at least like dying once. I like the only amount of time that I've spent actually replaying this game has just been watching you play it.
I
can't
know.
imagine how bad I would be picking this up.
Well, it's not too bad. I mean, we're mostly through it. I'm getting
It's
it. The most annoying part is that you have to change materia each time. It doesn't save the changes you make. That is like just bad design.
anytime that happens where it's like, oh man, do I really have to do this menuing again?
Yeah.
Anytime that comes up, it's just like, I think, and I don't know how realistic this is going to be.
Yeah.
Putting this out into the universe, but I think with like zero sarcasm attached to this, I think that the best character that they could possibly insert from the compilation into remake, and one that I would be 100% okay with and like totally for, is
what is this gonna be?
Elf from Before Christ.
Yeah.
I think that would be a very interesting character to create the dynamic between our party, Avalanche, and Shinra. I think that she would be and I'm obviously ignoring compilation lore by saying that, because we don't know where Elf is and anything like that. But as we've already discussed, Before Crisis kind of feels like a little bit like changed up, which is fine. I would love Veld to appear. Personally, I think that their story is a perfect fit for like if that story was in the original Final Fantasy VII. I don't know if I would like. I think that would naturally fall in, literally, like having a side story with a Turk and having his daughter be a part of Avalanche. Like that all feels so naturally fit for that kind of conversation. It also just fits. Like Elf is a natural fit for me. Looking at remake is because of the dynamic that they set up with Avalanche in remake. Is that if they are like not as extreme as Barrett is, like the one person that wouldn't be a part of that conversation, even though I like the character as like a villain from the perspective of just villainy, is Fajito, but that just doesn't really fit the MO anymore of Avalanche. So it doesn't make sense for him to really appear, even though that's really upsetting me. But what would make sense is to have somebody like Elf or somebody with the same sort of goal in mind of like what to use it for, fighting for what's right, all that other stuff, like that sort of justice sort of angle of it, without like trying to cause like too much harm to actual people, but like believing in the cause sort of thing. That's a perfect dynamic. And also that sort of arc that you would set up between like where Rufus's character goes, where our characters end up, like all of these things, like having this dynamic be like, oh well, these aren't all bad people, they're just doing what they think is right. Like Elf fits that to a T. So I think it would create like an actually interesting dynamic in the game to have her be the leader. Do I think that that's actually going to happen? I don't really think so. I would just, that was the one character I thought of. It's like, oh, this would be a great thing from a writing standpoint to cause like drama and to like have things be, I don't know, a more interesting dynamic, a little bit more murky, a little bit grayer than the black and white, which would add to that conversation.
Beg for forgiveness.
Yeah, and also like exactly like I think if there's one note to take from any of the compilation games, Before Crisis really does have like so much of the right things to take, the right things to give a nod to, with like Veld, with like the Turks, with their background, with like how they handle things, with like maybe a connection to Avalanche, connection to Rufus, like all of that stuff is like so great and absolutely something that they should play into.
Yeah, I agree, but okay, so side quests with CDPR. I'm not saying no, but were there even really side quests? Like the side quests were pretty indistinguishable from story quests. They were just
Finish this.
they just didn't get you to the next the next continent, or like, I don't know. It's just the storytelling in Witcher is good. Don't get me wrong, but like, it's more experiential. Like, the whole thing is experiential. You haven't told like this linear tale. You've told like a bunch of tales, because it's not like which Witcher book is Witcher 3. There is no answer, because all of those books are gone. It just draws from the many tales of the deep lore of the Witcher series, which, by the way, isn't very good. Like, I'm not sure if you've read any of The Witcher. It's like not very good. The Witcher games are way better, and it's because of like, it just takes you into deep sort of things, but nothing like really progresses the narrative. As a matter of fact, like, the real ending of The Witcher 3 is the last DLC, Blood and Wine. So, I mean, yes and no on side quests. It's more like CDPR nails quests. That's the way that it is. And it's not really side and main, you know. Thank you. They're not, right, Rods? You know, but I am excited about Cyberpunk. I do wish it were third person as well, but like, honestly, I'm okay with it. I'm just excited to see Keanu in something other than a Bill and Ted reboot.
Did you watch that? I did.
Yeah, it was alright.
All right. I have watched the other two movies, so I wouldn't be going into blind, but I definitely want to watch the other two before I get into this one. I heard it was pretty decent, so I'm actually excited.
Yeah, it was alright.
Keanu for Vincent.
They felt very old, and that made me sad.
Hey, you know what? It happens. It happens to those guys. I mean, you know what? Actually, I don't want to bring this up for too long because I don't think that it's necessary. It only blows my mind. So just going into that, just keep that in mind. Is that I was thinking about that with the announcement of Dexter becoming coming back. Which, by the way, was First Class posted about that, and it was the strangest thing to me because I'm actually in the middle of rewatching it right now. So the fact that there actually is more coming, I'm just like, what the
Oh
fuck?
man, I was so excited just because I felt like that did not end the way I wanted it to end.
So here's the thing: I actually haven't seen past season.
Okay, I'm not gonna say anything. I mean,
I'm actually just started season 4.
I don't necessarily disagree with the ending like a lot of people do, but
I've heard bad things. I've already heard very bad things in terms of like how people didn't
yeah,
like it.
I'm not gonna say much. Okay, that's fine.
I'm sorry. There is a conversation about a dance that I mixed. I don't think I ever asked this, but is the reason Cloud knows how to dance is because of practice, or is it because of Genova powers? You know what? That is the best question you could have possibly asked, Rods. That's the deep cut questions, and that is probably a yes.
I would.
Fate is not to be taken lightly.
Bro, Nami, it's probably because Genova powers looked at the other
dance,
dancers
asshole.
and was able to allow Cloud to access their powers through reading
Going in.
their minds and their negative emotions and turned them into dance.
I'm ending this.
I would
That's
watch.
right.
a
Did you watch all of it?
million- A million dance-offs. I would, if all of part 2 is just more of the dance minigame, I would be all about it. I love the dance scene.
It only makes me look forward to more of those like off the beaten path
Need some
moments.
help?
I want to
of, like,
see
strange.
them shove Red 13 into a sailor
You know it.
uniform.
Ride for me.
Here we go.
Yeah, the rhythm game is coming, Skittle. For sure. Oh man, I really cross my fingers that things like that. I heard that the memories of Melody was actually pretty decent for what it was. So, you know, if people want that. I personally did not want any of that for Kingdom Hearts, but you know what? It's not for me anymore.
Take it from
not
here.
my
Yeah, the world doesn't revolve
I
around you.
trained for this.
No, I didn't ask for that dance minigame, but hell, you know what? Somebody did,
All right.
right? Somebody did. They put that out in the universe, and they wanted that, and now it's
Here we go.
reality. And that person was no more.
Beg for
Don't
forgiveness.
give up.
But you know,
Enjoy. No more.
No more.
the Genova explanation is like, oh god, is the easiest go-to for anything that Cloud is doing. That doesn't make any sense. Or, like, how did he know that? How did he just do that? Like, how is he jumping around on flying blocks in space in the singularity? Like, what is that?
Throwing in the towel.
I don't know. Probably Genova.
You're done.
I thought that when Tifa landed there, that she was Sephiroth, and then another Sephiroth dropped in. And I was
And you're like, oh,
that is
confirmed.
confirmed. Literally, that thought ran through my mind. Confirmed. So here's the thing: is it really just seems like Sephiroth is using all of this happening here to just toy with the
Sorry,
party?
I'm late.
I
It
think
doesn't seem like there's much of an end goal for this man in this particular moment, other than to.
Beg for
I mean,
play
would
with
we
this.
know though?
No,
You know?
it's my assumption. That is like just my own opinion about it. But just knowing a little bit about like who Sephiroth is and how like consumed he is about like
Go on.
Cloud and all of this other stuff, it just seems like something that he would really get caught up in, which is just making life just a terrible misery for Cloud and the party. I loved like this is like the one part of the game where like slow-mo for me is
Let's
like
go.
very nice.
Looking good.
Very nice.
Very nice.
I wish I knew more about Chrono Trigger to have that conversation, but I've heard a lot of parallels between those two.
Take it off.
Oh my god, that would be so great. Imagine the reason why Cloud knows how to dance is because his mom teaches him. I'm down for
His
that.
mom,
scene.
Minerva.
His mom, Minerva. Jesus Christ. Yeah. I hate to say it, and I don't know how people feel about it, but I actually haven't played Chrono Trigger, but I have experienced Chrono Cross because it's one of my brother's favorite games. And I actually really love that game. I love the music.
Keep it together.
It's fantastic. So good. And I'm one of those guys who does tend to like the story for it. And it's a guilty pleasure, if anything. I don't know how much of my judgment can look at that story and not enjoy it. So, which coincidentally in Chrono Cross, you do fight a manifestation of fate. Just as a side note for those going back to that conversation for a second.
I'm not going out like this.
Still up.
It's okay. I'll do better.
Writhe for me.
Writhe for me.
Yeah, this guy
He's so horny.
he's great. He's fantastic. I really do like the way that they present this scene. Like it's very what you want from Sephiroth.
All right.
One day I will get into Chrono Trigger. But unfortunately, and just from like an outside perspective, looking in, that game has already been picked apart to death.
Come on. Go on.
I'm waiting.
I do know a little bit about the story.
Don't overdo it.
The concept of like, isn't it like that they eat planets, Lavos?
Pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, like immediately that does that is like a very Genova-esque alien thing to do, especially if you crash land on the planet on a meteor, which I'm imagining is exactly what happens with Mars. Yeah, that's a pretty. I mean, but where is your extraterrestrial gonna come from? You know?
I won't let you down. I'm feeling...
I'm not saying that that's a wrong assumption to make, or
Shake it
even
off,
something
okay?
that, you know, shouldn't be looked into. It's the same thing with Final Fantasy X for me, where it's like, I would love to see like the connections that could be made there. I just don't have the experience with the game. Also, that stance, the Octaslash, pretty great.
Oh, the memories.
Oh, the memories.
Let's dance, asshole.
Oh, the memories, yeah.
Beg for forgiveness.
By the way, I do want to mention that there's something that I looked into at this particular part of the fight, which is that
Let's do this.
Sephiroth, once he reactivates Meteor, so to speak,
Keep it together.
the there are these like black little strands that start flying around Sephiroth, and it's very, and I'm not saying that this is the case because I'm not, you know, completely off my rocker, but it's very similar to the same look that chaos, not chaos, but Nero has in Dirge of Cerberus.
After you.
It's a very similar like pattern and all this other stuff. It was something that I looked at. Obviously, like, it's probably its own thing. There's the whispers in the wing, by the way, which is super strange for anybody who's interested.
That whole thing looks like him just straight up controlling like negative live stream.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and the strand that like shoots up to become meteor is all just purple.
Here.
All purple strand. It's not like a mix or anything like that. It's very, very strange. So at this point, this is where he has those like
Don't
little
overdo it.
black strands flying around. This is also just complete chaos in general.
Hang back. Deal with that.
One thing that I did really like when I was looking into this game for like the videos, one of the things I had a really hard time finding was somebody to willingly die in this last bit of the game. Where he's coming out.
I'm thinking about it.
You don't have to, because there's not really much that happens, like
Pray for
even
me.
when it, you know, does. Just because
Not throwing in the towel.
I didn't realize that you could fight through that, and then I realized that just was not gonna
Beg
happen.
for forgiveness.
I was like, that's really great if that works out.
Yeah, it's not gonna work out.
It's okay. It's okay.
I think I might die here.
You just have to run. That's all you have to do. Just run mindlessly
This can't be.
and just hope to God that something doesn't hit you. Which in this game is very unforgiving.
I remember how to. I'm remembering how you do this fight, and it's I've probably got one more in me, and then we're be okay.
No problem. Fingers crossed then. Send your energy. Yes, and the music in this is amazing too. Just the music in this game in general is like fantastic.
Yeah.
By the way, for those who, and this is super off topic, I mentioned Chrono Cross. If any of you guys are fans of that music, there's actually a live concert that just happened. Not just, but like in like the last couple months or so, there was a live concert for that. And I swear, I think I might have brought this up with you,
Yeah.
Bronani.
Or wait, that I don't know if that was for Chrono Trigger. I think that was for.
Oh, it's Chrono Cross.
I don't
Sorry,
think it was
that's
for
right.
Chrono Cross. I think that was for Undertale.
Yeah, they did that too.
Yeah, that's the one you told me about.
Yes, and that also, if you guys are Undertale fans, that is an amazing live rendition of the soundtrack. That's literally the best one that I've heard. Super good. But for Chrono Cross, there was a live recording of like this concert that they had, and the music of that is unbelievable. Like the music is already a 10 out of 10 by itself,
Right.
but like, oh my god, it's like the best. It's the best music. And if you love Undertale, yes, the live concert literally killed it. It's great. He's actually, so a funny thing about that, Bronami, is that it's his band and him who are playing. So it's like it's from the composer himself making music for the live version with his band. It's so good. A lot of just really interesting choices too. The battle theme, which I think is universally looked at as like one of the worst like battle themes in like an RPG. It doesn't really. It's not a very great song. They even make that sound good. So definitely check it out if you can find it. I don't know if it's up on YouTube or something like that, but I highly recommend buying it. It's just fantastic.
Let's dance, asshole.
Well,
You're done.
You want some past chapters, like going flashbacks, like with Zach Rods? Was that what you mentioned? Because that would be awesome. I'm really looking forward to getting like more information about. You know what we're gonna get, and I guarantee you, like when
Don't know
Falna
about me.
drops the knowledge of like the weapons and all that other stuff,
Enjoy it.
that is going to be very much a rendition visually. If you're going for big, like you did with like the Cetra VR cutscene, I can almost guarantee that Falna talking about like when Genova showed up and all of that other stuff, you could so make that into a visual experience, like showing Genova like killing Cetra or like taking Cetra and like infecting people and all this other stuff, like, and then the Cetra fighting back with like summons,
ride for me.
and then you have like that Shiva lore getting like dropped in a little bit. Super great.
Get ready.
Now I'm thinking about it,
Great.
what is it?
Take it from here.
Now that they've kind of dropped the
Now you're in for it.
look for Dreamweaver for
Let's
or
switch it up.
Genova Beat for remake, I wonder if they're gonna do some stylistic differences for the other versions of Genova that we might
No
see.
need to panic.
And that I think would be a really great move too. Like some new Genova
Not looking
designs,
good.
design fights and other stuff would be great.
All right. After you.
Damn it!
Away.
Oh, dude, like having a Lazard and like
Can't.
Zach,
I won't.
like flashback. I know that
had this.
you mentioned Lazard before. Like, I think it would all just be really nice to see. There's so much that you could do. I would love to, like, I don't know what it was, but talking about Undertale made me want to play that and Deltarune. That would be a fun game to revisit.
How many of the endings did you make it through in Undertale?
I only did the two, and I felt like very like
You mean you did the
so-
pacifist ending?
I did the pacifist ending, and I think I did try a Genesis run, maybe, or Genesis run, genocide run. God damn it, my life is fucked because of compilation knowledge. I won't be able to have non Final Fantasy VII conversations ever again. Yeah, I tried the genocide run. It was actually kind of hard for me. I couldn't get past Undyne, I think. I felt bad, honestly. The game made
it's
me
really
feel,
like really hard. I felt.
I felt like really bad just restarting the game. Like I think I actually took a break between trying the genocide run and like my first like complete pacifist run.
Yeah,
It was just sad. Like I felt bad. Like Flowey made me feel really guilty for trying to like delete my save or start a new file and all this other stuff. I was like, Jesus Christ, dude! Like you're really laying this on kind of thick for me. I don't know. Deltarune was fun though. I played as much of that as possible. Like I understand the angle that you're trying to take with that too, Jane. Like that would actually be an interesting mystery to build up in that way, is like through that story. I can see that. Yeah, Bronami, like that is something that I was literally like, that's the negative life stream as a like concept from the lore is, for me at this point, like the only explanation that seems reasonable enough to explain like what is happening here. Like like I know that like everyone was saying like geostigma, and yes, like geostigma is a part of the negative life stream. That's what was so like, and I had to mention it in the video because I was actually like kind of mad that I couldn't get like a direct answer about like what the negative life stream was from anybody, because it was just a term that was like on the Wikipedia page, and I was just like, why is this like so hard to find out about? Like I have literally looked through like the compilation stuff for like months, and I never came across anything like it. And then the fact that it's just mentioned so passively in like two like very small instances is just weird. But it makes complete sense after figuring out like what it was. It seems like a perfect way to tie a lot of like the most foreign elements of the compilation together too, without making it feel, and I'm not saying like those elements are necessary to connect, but it would be very convenient for them as a writer to look at that and sort of house it under the same umbrella, right? One of the things that's sort of apparent is that Deep Ground seems pretty connected to a lot of the OG experiments. So like the fact that we find like those Deep Ground soldiers in the drum where we find Genova, like all of that is like a really interesting little hint to just saying like, hey, like these things are all kind of connecting in the same way, just to make them a little bit like more cohesive with the original story. Like that's what it feels like when I say stuff like that. And that makes sense to me. Like I do not want like the full force of the compilation to like return. Like I think that like a lot of people are super put off by the compilation, and for good reason. Like a lot of people do not like it. Ruined Final Fantasy VII for them. Like, and I know that a lot of people feel like that way in a majority. Not to say that all the things in the compilation are bad, but like if you were to do anything like that, the best way to do that is just to house them in these same conversations that we're having with things that everyone is already familiar with like the original Final Fantasy VII. Like it's almost like too easy for them to do it that way, and such like it's
I have
low
this.
risk to do it that way as well. Just makes the most sense. And yeah, and also the conflict with Wutai. That one's a little strange, but at the same time, yeah, there's a lot of things to play in with that you could do with like Lizard and stuff like that. You gonna give it another crack, or do you wanna?
Who, me?
I just want to gauge. Yeah, I
Oh,
just wanted
yeah,
to
I'm
gauge
fine.
where you. Okay,
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna read some of these comments then.
Yeah.
By the way, like, and I just want to make it clear, like,
Let's finish.
if you guys were watching me play this, we would be still fighting the Whisper, even though like that's a death that you literally can't take. Like at that point, like this is not easy, at least for me. So to jump back into literally a final boss fight after having not played the game for quite a bit,
Yeah.
it's a lot to chew for any game, and especially if you're doing it on hard mode. So it's a commendable thing that you are doing. And I appreciate that we're also wanted to look at this stuff.
Yeah,
There's
and
a lot to talk about.
I almost want to like let the timer go down, but probably not.
If you get to that point, you're the one in control of that seat at that point. So if
We'll
you want to
see.
like let it end with that kind of bang, you know, we can always end it with the bad ending. Let me see here. I'm gonna read some of this, guys. I think for the most part, the way that the Wutai War is framed in Remake is that they are using the party in Remake to rekindle the war. So at the moment where we start off in Remake, I think the war is over. But then they're trying to literally start it again. Through because Shinra needs an enemy, quote unquote, you know, something that they need like to fight against for the sake of just keeping people like fearful and turn a blind eye. Which, by the way, is kind of the way that Rufus wanted to do things, but Rufus was like way more clear cut about like just trying to take over with just like a really like no like putting the wool over the eyes of people, so to speak, approach.
Right.
But I don't see this Rufus doing that either, which I think is probably a smarter move for his character, but
Fate is not your own will.
Nothing personal.
yeah, I think
Let's do
that's
this.
sort of how it's like. Again, I know that Maximilian makes this connection himself, but like it's sort of like a realized version of the thing is like it's taken over like the planet and moved on from other planets to
Need some help?
Gaia,
Don't know
which
about
is
me.
I think what makes Genova like such an
Here we go.
interesting creature
You know
is
it.
that we know nothing about like anything that she's really about, and that she's just this like parasitic force, which is one of the reasons why Genova
Take the lead.
is so interesting overall when we see her through these characters that are so obviously influenced by her. So like, and that's one of Babyseal's like things, right? Is that
Yeah.
you have that like her acting through other people thing, which I think is like the most interesting perspective that we could have on that kind of character.
Yeah.
But we just haven't, like, in my mind, and this is just my own personal thing, is that they could play that up in this game, but I don't know how far that has gone in the compilation yet. I know that it kind of is more apparent in like certain instances, maybe like the kids are all right and things like that, and also like the mention of Hojo and all this other stuff. There's like influence being like kind of recognized by Jenova and like Hojo's actions.
Right for me.
It's all very like Jenova, just like in concept, is an extremely like it's intentionally so this very complicated to understand, you know, larger than life extraterrestrial being. Very like very crazy, which is great. You know, like it makes that character interesting, and keeping her a mystery is also interesting.
Let's do this.
New question, don't play a lot of games, so maybe this is common sense, but is there any significance to the colors of materia? Yes. There are certain materia that are colored a certain way, I guess. Oh, you're saying like, is the color particular to like a lore connection? I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to, yeah, it's, you guys have actually just like full force like jumped into like
Sorry I'm late.
great conversation, so I'm gonna try and keep up with that.
Enjoy it.
No holding back.
Let's get serious.
You guys have definitely made me try and pick up speed reading,
Stay back. Go on.
which is great that you guys are like actually like, I know that we're all kind of invested in the same thing here, which is just like, this is just, there's just a lot of interesting stuff to think about with this game. This is why I love Final Fantasy VII and Remake. Fantastic.
Get fired up. A
Beg
bonus.
for forgiveness.
Get him. That's it. Bring it.
Yeah, I was reading the Force similar to the live stream, and also the opposite. Yes. Becoming one with like planets and stuff like that. That I was actually saying that in regard to like your statement, and I agree. It's there's such a similarity between these forces that it's hard not to ignore that they are so similar.
Here it comes. You're ready.
The live stream and Jenova do act very like in terms of like their certain mechanics of theirs. It's very odd how similar.
I can't. This was gonna hurt. I won't. One more.
Oh, the memories.
Here we go.
I wish that there was more of like a lore connection to those colors, but yeah, I think there's a lot of the lowdown on that, definitely. As far as like somebody, I think Skittle broke down like the colors pretty well.
Let's get this over with.
That's an interesting way to look at it, Rods. Looking at like generating more fuel by starting like a war. That's really neat to think about it that way. Where it's like, oh man, like these reactors aren't doing such a great job anymore. Like, what if we just start like feeding the planet bodies, which is Hito's MO before Crisis, but not for fuel. he's the only one who's made it very blatant that like the purpose of death is to return to the planet in terms of some sort of greater purpose. I guess Sephiroth uses it to his end for fuel at some point, so I don't see why Shinra would be against doing that for themselves.
Nothing personal.
Come on. Let's go. No more games. It's over.
So the beg for forgiveness line is a really good question. Is that Sephiroth wants, like, when he says beg for forgiveness in like AC, the follow-up line to that is like I can't remember I literally had it in my head and it just jumped out, but all of it is pretty much geared towards like just wanting Cloud to continue to suffer.
Here we go.
From what I understand. And also they wanted to make him and this is not me speaking, this is literally like a quote
Enjoy it.
from one of like the interviews that they had about Sephiroth's dialogue in AC, which is this line is a mention to that. Is that they just wanted to make him sound like all-knowing to a degree. They wanted him to be like this really like far more intelligent being than anybody else. So they were just thinking of lines that gave him that kind of gravitas to a degree. But again, a lot of the focus that Sephiroth has when it comes to like those particular lines in AC is all for him to like cause suffering to Cloud. Because that's the main reason he shows up, is and why he does like half the stuff that he does. He really wants to just do all sorts of damage to Cloud in any way possible, because he feels like he's kind of responsible, and he's also kind of upset about the first time that they kind of confronted each other, and how Cloud like bested him. Again, these are not my words. This isn't like me trying to like falsify
Keep it together.
a motive. This is just what has been said about it by the developers at certain instances.
Let me hear you wail.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too. Nami is that he doesn't care about the planet according to Aerith, and I think maybe that might be like, I think he cares about it because he sees it as a means to an end. That's my only perception of like Sephiroth is that he's always seen the planet as a tool to get what he wants at a certain degree, like to a certain point in the story. Like maybe he thought he was a part of it in a bigger way before he became a part of the live stream the first time when he falls into the reactor
Shall I
and
give you
spawn.
despair?
But I think for the most part he's just wanting to use it for power, which is like super important for him. Yes. Okay. Congratulations. That is how we do it.
All right. So it's pretty clear just at the end of that too, like how much we are fighting both the Whispers and Sephiroth at the same time. Like, and it's clear there. Yeah, I mean, he straight up throws the Whispers. You know, it couldn't be more clear.
There is definite
Quickly.
Yeah. And also, like, one of the things in question here is that he uses the Whispers as Cloud is hitting him.
Yeah.
And probably uses them to transport them to a place where they can have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have them swarming around them, and then they're both just gone. And also, it seems like this space for the party ceases to be a thing as well. We don't know what happens to the party while this scene is happening.
What if I just hit skip right here?
Get rid of it. We don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but
no. So I do. Okay, I do have. So just for those of you who are tuning in that wanted to know, kind of what I'm leaning towards as to what remake is trying to tell us happens in terms of timelines is I think that, you know, it's pretty well established that we've been in the Beagle timeline the entire time. And I want you all to recognize that in this last chapter, the party would be dead were it not for the Whispers. The Whispers saved the party's life on 3 individual occasions. And so what I think has ultimately occurred here, what we've just done, is we've defeated the Whispers. And the Whispers, I think, means that when I say defeated the Whispers, I really mean that the entirety of Sephiroth's corruption of whatever this planetary mechanism is gone. So that makes me think that whenever Sephiroth infected the Whispers is before Zack's last stand. And we're coming up to Zack's last stand here, and I'll show you why I think that. But first, we can talk about this scene, which is like the scene that fucked everybody up. Like, this was it. This was like, oh wait, what does this mean? Is Sephiroth good? What does he want? Is Genova in the clouds or in the stars? Where's the flower? You know, and there's all sorts of little details here. What are your thoughts leading into the Edge of Creation?
For me, oh god, there's a lot to say. I tend to agree that there is some sort of like unbinding happening at this particular moment, and that like at this point the field is kind of being leveled. You have Sephiroth kind of offering sort of and maybe to have Cloud assist.
Yeah.
But from like the way that this scene has been classified in the past, it definitely feels like there is definitely this this odd dynamic shift here, where this is where Cloud would have been beating Sephiroth, and now that we're kind of, you know, skipping way further ahead in terms of like events happening in a particular moment that they shouldn't. I think that this mental space, like metaphor of like the other times we've seen the scene, the fact that Sephiroth kind of just leaves Cloud to himself after kind of hinting at like all of these bigger things that he's expecting Cloud to be a part of in some way, really to me just sets the stage for complete chaos moving forward in terms of like what Sephiroth is planning to do with Cloud. Maybe a darker road than the one originally, maybe in the same context. For me, that's the case. Like that's how I see it. But yeah, it's mainly just the same scene to me from the original, just under a different context with a different outcome.
And
I think that's the scariest thing.
Do you think they're on the meteor?
I think that they're the likely. I think that they are. I think that that's the only like explanation for the space that they're sitting on. But it could easily be something else. That was my initial impression of like where this conversation was taking place. Oh, thank you, Schrodinger, for gifting a gift to June. It was very sweet.
Keep talking.
Yeah, so I guess that's
it.
The only thing that I can really think about for this. It's fantastic. It's fantastic amount of like interesting detail. I also do think that the shape that we see in, somebody asked me about this, is like, do I see any shapes in like the galaxy that or like the whatever Cloud and Sephiroth are looking at, like if I see any shapes in that. And the only one that I can reasonably see without like making too many jumps of logic for myself is the flower shape. That the stars that we're looking at, it all looks like flowers to me. Just one big yellow flower.
You are Georgia O'Keeffe here. You'll have to look that up. I'm not sure if you get that reference.
I don't. I don't.
You will research it later and then be upset with me. Get up. Okay. Well, let's watch it.
Okay.
Let's do this. Shall we talk about that?
I was gonna say I don't know. There's something odd about him getting a flash there because it's usually triggered by a familiar scenario,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously we know is the case for this. But it's very odd because we know that is also, a very odd future event to remember.
And we also it does at least appear that in some kind of vague sense, Sephiroth grabs his hand because he's in pain. Like he knows we know that Sephiroth clutches his head like that in Crisis Core when he has Genova flashes. He clutches it exactly the same way. So this is a strange bit of like seeming warmth from Sephiroth. I'm not saying that he's a good guy, but
is interesting.
yeah,
I think that his like kindness here is more for the fact that he's trying to be. I think he just doesn't want him to see what he's about to see. I think that's one of the reasons.
Maybe, or maybe he's not stopping the vision. Maybe he's telling him to face it. Maybe he's like, you don't have to fight this.
I think he's trying to fool him just because the very next line of dialogue is like he's saying it's like, look, like what you're about to see hasn't happened, and I kind of don't want it to happen that way. So I don't want you to see it just yet. Like I want you to kind of be fooled into thinking that that's not the outcome of this, really.
Yeah.
Careful now. That which lies ahead does not yet exist. Our world will become a part of it one day.
So he's looking at
will not.
This sort of yellow flowery galaxy, don't you think?
And
yeah, that's definitely for me like the thing. That's the flower.
This is.
And also like mentioning while looking at like this larger, the edge of creation thing is also to me very reminiscent of just like this particular scene. If like this is like Meteor, if this is like kind of a similar area as to like where the final part of the game takes place in terms of like say for Sephiroth and all those other things, is that's what Sephiroth's plan is to do, is to recreate life in his own image as like a god. So like he wants everything to become one so that he can do like just recreate everything. And that this is an original. This is not like the plan of Sephiroth kind of switches around depending on what story you're looking at. But in the original, that's something that Sephiroth desires, is to use the planet's life stream in combination with the power that his mother possesses to literally recreate life,
right?
In some with just his own power, which is what Safer Sephiroth is pretty much the form of the god that he's embodying. That's going to change reality essentially as we know it. So
Right, and it's I think important to note that it is also called Edge of Creation in Japanese. That is specifically the best way to describe the translation. Like, it's a very direct translation. And so I think there is something really, I think, fundamental to the terminology. And I do think it has to do with the recreation of it's going to determine who's in charge of the creation of the new planet, so to speak. And I think that Rod said a good point with the yellow flower.
I'm trying to catch up here. My first reaction when hmm. Yes, so like the yellow flower thing is definitely like something that I would see as a representation of like the good, which is the quote unquote good of
Yeah,
just like pure life stream.
yeah,
Whereas like a purple maybe more hinting at like
negative live stream.
a negative life stream sort of side of
Mm-hmm.
things. He's not going to become right. I think that's an interesting point to make. Um, he's not going to become a part of it, and he won't let Cloud become a part of it as well. Yeah, I think that having that control over Cloud it's not about mixing in with it. That's like the
Yeah,
last thing that Sephiroth wants. What Sephiroth wants is power over it, which he can't
yeah,
have
from within it.
completely.
Yeah,
Exactly. So at this particular point in the story, depending on like how we're looking at it from the original perspective, like Sephiroth is kind of put himself in a really good position to take control over the live stream. But this new Sephiroth, depending on where he's from or how like this Sephiroth is manifesting, that could not be the way that he wants things to be going for him. He
mm-hmm.
might not want that same outcome of where he ends up. Obviously, like at the end of OG, like he does get dispersed into the live stream to a degree, and then has to do something to preserve himself, and that is because of Cloud that he is able to exist. Which is also, I think, why somebody mentioned. I may not be able to read the name here really quickly, but the concept of him being tender here is because Sephiroth knows that that this is a particular. This might be just not the case, but from what I'm imagining is that Sephiroth knows that Cloud is an asset to him in terms of like keeping him alive, maybe to a degree, and that's why he's not being blunt force with. He's not trying to cause Cloud suffering right now, which is his usual MO. What he's trying to do is coax him to his side, which is not something that that Sephiroth has ever wanted to do.
Well,
he hasn't tried to be sensitive. He has literally tried to inflict pain on him so that Cloud can just constantly remember him. But maybe there's something to be gained for Sephiroth by being more courteous to him.
Well,
obviously he starts toying with him right after this dialogue.
Right. so that is a possibility, but again, one of the things we keep coming back to is that perhaps this is a way to retell the compilation through the lens and events of Remake. And let's face it, the concept of being tied to Cloud and obsessed with Cloud's memory, it's probably just that they are using the concept that was in On the Way to a Smile, and they are putting it in this story, so that Final Fantasy VII Remake tells that story, but just within the timeline of Final Fantasy VII. So
if
it's
we're
just
going,
a way of
if we're going full on into like theory, like going into a theory here, that is to me the most accurate way to tell the story. If we're just talking about like future of Final Fantasy VII Remake, we're talking about like what this game is doing really well. From an observational standpoint, this is not like 100% true, but it does come up quite a lot while playing the game. Is that for beat in Remake, there are on the way to a smile events and occurrences that are very reminiscent of just that story being retold in this game.
Yeah, even the kids are all right. I mean, Kyrie,
Yes.
Leslie. I mean, those are. This is a good time to introduce those characters. You know,
Exactly. It's
and
it's
yeah,
it's a perfect stage, this part of remake,
yeah,
to recontextualize everything that, like, and I know, like me and Baby Seal, maybe me a little bit more, like, go on and on about like compilation and how it's relevant and all this other stuff. There's no need to tell it so bluntly,
yeah,
like beat for beat, the story of the compilation. There's a lot that people don't like. There's a lot of people that feel burnt by it. But if you wanted to tell those stories, the good parts about them, Remake has done a very good job of setting the stage to get all of those pieces of the compilation into this story without getting in the way of the story of the original Final Fantasy VII. This is a really good example of that, where it's like, this is a scene that you can take into context with the OG, but also seeing reflections of the compilation being
right.
inserted here, not in a very aggressive way. Like, there are, moments of aggressional. I want to say aggressional. I meant like aggressive storytelling, like aggressive pushing of like a narrative, and a lot of that stuff comes off kind of strong.
Kind of
And I really
ham-fisted, yeah,
ham-fisted, right? But
yeah,
there are other elements of Remake that do such a subtle job of just dropping things in where you just would never expect them to be, and that they're just nods
yeah,
to a bigger story that people don't know about. But that's the beauty of what Remake can do. That's
yeah,
the absolute, like, best that Remake can be, is not hurting the original story, but giving certain moments a different level of context
right.
with the strength of the compilation at its side. Not retelling the compilation necessarily, but more using all of those elements that make those stories strong. And some of them are less strong than others, but there are
Some will be straight
elements.
retelling though. Let's probably be honest. Some will be
Sure.
just a retelling, and I think that's fair given the age and obscurity of some of the compilation stuff. Like, I don't think Square is banking on the entire world having access to the For Crisis. Like, just because they happen to know that people have put up the entirety of the story on YouTube, that's not an official decision of Square. In Square's eyes, they don't have an official way for you to experience most of the compilation. And so when this is all said and done, will Final Fantasy VII Remake be an experience that, without the context of the compilation, will give you most of the experience of the compilation and have you understand like its core concepts and stuff like that? And I do think that's sort of the purpose of this. But Gene actually does bring up a really good point in about the pronoun thing. The pronoun thing is very significant enough that that Ultimania goes off and on about it. Like, Ultimania found it extremely significant that for whatever reason Sephiroth uses the pronoun ore instead of watashi in this scene only, and that's a personal pronoun. It's masculine as opposed to sort of genderless, which does indicate that either there's some change. And he used to refer to himself with ore, but after he had his Genova breakdown, it was Watashe, which is more of like a us sort of thing. um and it is generally feminine or formal, and so it was really in line with his merger with Genova. And so the fact that he did change that is significant enough that the developers told Ultimania they could write about it. So who knows if that's just them seeing like how the fans react to that? Like, oh, do we get more development? Is is are we going to see Sephiroth um, be more of a tragic character because he is he has a very tragic backstory, you know, and uh, just a quick tangent. I will say that one of the best characterizations of somebody exactly like Sephiroth, like a soldier created in a laboratory raised without parents, is in fact in your show, Sleepezi, The Boys, um, on Amazon, which you star in as Jack Quaid.
That's right.
As Homelander. Homelander is exactly like what would realistically happen. And there is some tragedy and sadness to all of that. And the way that Sephiroth, is developed in Crisis Core is sort of frustratingly incomplete because we see, oh yeah, that kind of sucks for him, and then all of a sudden, all it takes is a little bit of like exposure to Genova, and then he's a total full blown psychopath. And so there's always been like this need for that to get developed somehow. I'm not saying he's getting a full redemption. That might happen, but I don't think so. I hope not.
I'm personally on the fence that just won't, just because of, I think that Sephiroth stays strong as a character, being the villain that we kind of always have known him to be. That the context of his story being tragic is important, I think. But I don't think it's about it. Like, that character arc doesn't need to stem that far. But if that tragedy is related
Mm-hmm.
to like the audience, related to the audience, I think that's where you'd hit like a home run. And
Well, okay. Honestly, I don't think they should explore it too much. I think
oh,
they should.
I'm
Yeah,
not saying that. I'm just saying
yeah.
is that like we already get enough of that in like the original, like where it's like you can kind of put the pieces together that this guy has kind of had like this really unsettling there's an unsettling backstory to
The
like how
only
he's
not in OG. In OG, he doesn't make sense. He doesn't really make sense. Like the only thing that you find out that pisses him off is that he finds out Hojo's his dad. But like in the OG, like Tifa refers to him as cold. Like everybody doesn't like the guy. There's nothing tragic. He's just a dick. He sucks from the get. And then like and then and then you kill him and then he kills Aerith. Like that's it. In Crisis Core, like he lets Zack go on a date with Aerith. Like, go, you better get your Aerith stuff out of the way, you know. Oh, by the
I,
way, in 7 years I kill her. Like it's just I almost think that Crisis Core did a disservice to the character.
I'm not sure exactly how strongly I feel about his characterization in that game. I think that it's not the worst thing that they could have done with the character. I don't even think it's necessarily bad. I see what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Um,
They're trying to
I don't
humanize
know.
everybody.
Yeah, they're just trying to make a human out of him a little bit
Yeah.
before like he snaps, and I think that's mainly because that you're spending so much time around him, and also like Zack doesn't have like a lot of like people around, like even with like Angeal and all
Well, they
these other
needed to
characters.
create a reason for Genesis to inject himself in the story too, and so for Genesis to be like the thing that flips the final switch for him, you know,
Yeah,
it's just yeah, it was a way for them to do that.
I think having him be like this guy who's like hinging on normal, but like ready to like have like that breakdown doesn't seem like too unnatural to me. So like the coldness from the original seems more appropriate to
Yeah,
me.
it seemed to me like and his menace was so like a lot of the menace of the character stemmed from him being like outside of the realm of our understanding. Like he seemed alien from the get.
Yeah,
Like he
I
was a
think
universe. He was almost a force of nature.
I was gonna say, just to like like it maybe like bring home the point that maybe like Sephiroth was changed. It seems like from like the original concept of like Sephiroth, when we find him in what we know now as like the Northern Crater, is that Sephiroth wasn't supposed to be just Sephiroth in a crystal um, that's about to summon the meteor with the black materia. Like he was actually like regarded like in the notes as having transformed physically and also take on the form of a new being, and that
Right.
being a little bit more feminine, like it didn't look just like Sephiroth, like all
Yeah.
those things could be like an indication that maybe the direction they wanted to take with Sephiroth was more to like have him be a jumping off point to a different kind of character,
Right.
not necessarily somebody else other than Sephiroth, but maybe hinting at like, and
Like
you
a
know,
more
if we're talking
fundamental
about like a,
transformation.
yeah, like if we're thinking about like most villains in Final Fantasy, like as a trope, like they end up like being somebody, it's going to be somebody else. Like we think it's Sephiroth, but it becomes Genova or something like that, or um, it kind of, you know, transforms like that over time. But I don't necessarily think, I think there is a reason why they kept it to being Sephiroth. Um, and I think it's interesting how powerful he comes off in the story as the villain. I think that like
Right.
linear growth for him is like he just gets more and more and more powerful
Yeah.
using Genova as like an asset
Right.
to that growth.
Right. But
I
you
didn't.
know, like it's but his caricature is so like kind of out of this world, like his level of megalomania and evil and like just the pureness of his willpower, that like I will say that it's almost inhuman, and the attempting to humanize that does sort of, it makes the whole, it makes the character not jar as well. um and so like I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm saying it needs to be done with more care than it has been done recently. Like, and I just want to respond to some comments too, because uh so yes, in The Kids Are All Right, Sung does like muse to himself about Genova and how Genova's proximity to things starts to drive them crazy. And so he theorized that perhaps Hojo ultimately
Succumb to
was
like madness
succumb, well,
through.
not, he was always an ambitious and evil guy, but that um the the plan to actually create Soldier, the you know the was potentially, you know, an idea implanted by Genova. So Genova manipulated Hojo into creating Sephiroth. Was sort of what Sung was getting at. And it's, again, it's it's written in a way where it's easily dismissible, because it's not saying that canonically that's what happened. It's saying that's what Sung thought might have happened. So Hojo still sucks. Like the guy still just sucks. And you know, he's a super bad.
He's always gonna be like
Just
they made it very clear in remake.
oh
This guy is
oh
not
man.
any
Just
better or
this
any like
guy this
he's
guy
bad.
catalogs your mom's parts. That's what
Yeah,
we know about the guy.
that's right.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention very briefly, just to, because we were getting away from the conversation, but it will be the last thing I say out on it. Is the I wanted to make it clear at some point, and maybe I didn't do a very good job, but the with with Final Fantasy VII, there is no compilation. Without Final Fantasy VII, the original, there is no compilation. So if we're ever going to see anything of that sort arrive in remake, I think it's very clear that they know that where people have hung their hat is on the original and want to experience things through the original. So, having said that, they've done a pretty good job of classifying the
Mhm.
original into this game
Mhm.
while also introducing those new elements. I just wanted to make it clear that moving forward, like if they stray away from that in any way, the original, they better have a really good reason. And they have demonstrated examples of restraint, and they've also demonstrated some like really like crazy, again, like ham-fisted stuff going in the future.
Yeah.
But it it is very clear to me that they wouldn't have built the game the way that they did, uh, knowing that they were just going to stray completely away from the original content, because it's
Right.
obvious through this game that they give so much of a shit about that original content and care about it a lot. Like, I think deviating a little bit is fine and showing off the compilation is fine, but none of the thematic relevance of the compilation exists without first telling the story of Final Fantasy VII.
And
So just with that in
yeah,
mind, like, it's all there just to enhance the original. It's never been to stand alone.
yeah,
Like, the game, none of the games do a very good job of that at all.
yeah,
Like, literally, Dirge of Cerberus does not, like, would be even more garbage if it wasn't associated with Final Fantasy VII. And a lot of people would say it's worse off for being a part of it, which I think is a lot of people's opinion. But that's where the compilation sits in regards to every other piece, like Advent Children, like to Before Crisis, to Dirge of Cerberus, to Crisis Core. Like, none of that exists.
yeah,
Uh,
and I think, you know, I think that without the well being poisoned, I think most people, like, if they just really paid attention to how the game went forward, would probably recognize that most of what's happening that's straying really isn't straying. It's just telling the same story in a little bit different way, because of the pacing of this game. And I even think that Zack's survival is probably that. If anything, it is probably a way to tell Zack's story to people that do not have access to a PSP.
mm-hmm.
Really. Because,
Yeah.
like, of course, we all know that we can play Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus and the OG. Well, the OG's, widely available everywhere, but the compilation titles, we all know that we can play those, but none of those can be played realistically, legally. And, Square has to operate on that premise. Like, we need to provide something for the fans that allows them to experience this stuff with technology that's currently available. And
And also, just without making it feel like what we're doing to the fan base is making them feel how some of the compilation made the fan base feel, which is completely, like, alienated.
right,
And that's another
yeah,
point of reference, is that this the value of Final Fantasy VII as an IP and remaking it with the content of, like, or the conscious of, like, oh, we're just going to do what we did with, like, the compilation. That would be the worst way to approach it from. It
yeah.
would be the worst way to do it,
And
because there's been a very mixed response to the entire compilation.
yeah,
But so, like, going into that, knowing what remake is, it's like they are taking a risk by including some of those elements if they were to. But if you were to do it right, I think it can only benefit the original story.
yeah, yeah. Okay, let's get through this, and then we can talk about we can. There's more that I think can be said about that, but let's get through this Edge of Creation scene and then the Zack scene.
Cloud, lend me your strength. Let us defy destiny together.
So they're already just talking about going against the flow of destiny together,
Never.
which is meaning that there is some way that they're about to, like, break away from that.
Yeah,
And
This is
that
so
it's
cool.
possible. Like, there is a way to get around that. Sephiroth knows that that's a possibility, and he just wants Cloud a part of it. This is all the same shot of the original. Obviously not for beat the same fight. But again, it's also clear. Like just to reiterate how powerful Sephiroth is that in AC, and this is again developers talking about like the director, people involved.
Not yet.
Talk about how strong Sephiroth is compared to Cloud in AC, where Sephiroth is literally not exerting himself one bit. He is not stressing over the
7
fight.
seconds
He's not
till
doing
the
any of
end.
that. And in this scene, that's
Time enough for you.
reclassified as like or
But what will
recontextualized
you do
in
with
the
it?
original, just to say like
Let's
Sephiroth
see.
is like exceedingly more powerful. And you got the 7 seconds line. You got the little gift of the black feather.
Time enough for you, perhaps, is one of my favorite lines.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mr. Vice President.
I don't know if he knew that he would
Mr.
say no,
President.
but I think that what that demonstrates
right.
is that there is a like Cloud's will is able to kind of defy that Sephiroth, which by the way, like in Remake, we see moments where Cloud is kind of helpless to help himself from like some type of control. But in that scene, like Sephiroth isn't forcing, he's asking. So maybe it's because he can't.
Yeah.
He can't change that part of Cloud to join him completely. Like, how much control does this Sephiroth have at this point over Cloud is a very like odd thing to see. And that's also one of the reasons why him being so like gentle with the situation is completely outside of the norm of what Sephiroth would do. It's very against his usual MO of like torturing him. So maybe the approach was to try and lure him to make the decision for himself because he
Right.
didn't have that control. You have Hojo losing his mind. That's right, Gene. That's right. That's the only logical explanation for what to be excited about here. I agree. I think again, yes, that there's a like that's up to you sort of thing. It's like there is only again this temptation to see like what Cloud does and all this other stuff. It's always something Sephiroth likes to see Cloud like struggle a little bit. He also likes to see what he does. He finds he's like Sephiroth, that's the only person he's thinking about is Cloud. So anything that Cloud does is something that Sephiroth is intrigued by or something that he wants to play around with or fuck with to a degree. You got a terrier here. It has
So
no relevance to the story at all, obviously.
okay, so obviously Stamps Champs now different. So we've got Harrier. Um, both bags say the word original on them. This is in September of Triple Out 7. The game starts in December, so it's just a couple of months. So obviously, this being different can mean a few things. It can mean that perhaps we've, experienced the entire story of Remake from Cloud's perspective, and Cloud has been sort of illusory. He's been under the control of, Genova Dreamweaver, and that's been changing our perception of things. And that's why we see things as Beagle, stamp. One is that since we seem to be dealing with some variety of timeline stuff, because it says that the whispers manifest from a future timeline, etc. There seems to be knowledge of the future involved. So perhaps what we've done is we have changed the past by defeating the whispers. So let's say let's just run with that. Stop me if you think this is absurd, but so let's say what we've done is we've defeated not the Whispers per se, but what we've done is we have reversed the corruption of the Whispers, right? And so that means that all of the corrupt Whispers were in place trying to do was make sure that they came to be, right? And so if we've defeated that, then whenever that started is when things started to change, or whenever that started, if that's now undone, perhaps what was undone is what's causing us to see, Terrier stamp, something in the past that, some decision that was made had some kind of was impacted somehow by whatever event caused the Whispers to get corrupt. That's one possibility. The other possibilities, there's multiple.
One moment in time
Yeah.
where something, the key moment has been changed.
Right. Or that corruption is gone. That corruption that happened at that moment is gone. So, I mean, the first thought would be, well, when Sephiroth falls into the live stream, that's when the corruption started to happen. And what we're seeing is like a retold look at the way that Sephiroth's will impacts the live stream. Like this is essentially Remake's version of Geostigma is the Whispers. It's the way that Sephiroth, uses his will. That's one possible thing. Could be that there's a conglomeration of timelines, Avengers style, and that what we're looking at is this one. And that's that. Or it could be sort of a mixture of all those things.
Yeah, I definitely think that like there's something like some variation or one of those variations that you mentioned are not unlikely to be the
Yeah.
case.
But it almost doesn't matter to me. I think moving forward, what is happening is I think the most important, and I think that is sort of indicated here.
Hey, Cloud, do you see that?
Yeah, I definitely think that there is that sort of sense about like the way that they try to approach this.
So, okay. So what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the Whispers turning into glowing balls of light after surrounding Midgar for the events of the ending. And
right, but that obviously doesn't make sense because the events of the ending are in the future 2 months.
Right.
But okay, so those gold flakes. We want to talk about that. So those gold flakes, if you read the July Famitsu, Toriyama actually describes what the original concept for the Whispers was, and the original concept was golden sand flakes.
I wonder what these balls of light look like. Definitely not that original concept. That was definitely something that seemed to be apparent there, where it's like, okay, well, then they might be making a very apparent choice to make those Whispers, or what the Whispers represented at that time, more visually corrupt by Genova.
Yeah.
And that could have been done very easily by linking them thematically to the appearance of like black cloaked figures, for instance.
Right, yeah. Or maybe like
look.
making it have purple blood or purple.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah. All of those things could have been a very easy way for like from an art design perspective to illustrate that kind of corruption. And then also keeping that design for when maybe like they were released from that control.
So, are we in the Terrier timeline right now? Is that what we're looking at?
I have no idea.
Well, the gold
The
flakes
only
seem to
thing
be
is
there.
that this only seems to happen in a scene with Zach. We don't. The problem with the scene that I have is that once we get to the party, like at the time of day has kind of shifted. It's like all of this doesn't necessarily line up with that end scene very well. But that could, to me, could be like a number of different things. By the way, I love how this like little golden flake just comes in the room.
Yeah,
and
this made us
it's
think
right
that
in
like
his chest.
it was his life returning to him.
I mean, it
But
definitely
he's moving around
seemed
before it hits it, yeah.
Seems very odd that like the timing of that visually does make things. And then you cut to a yellow flower. Is that really how we're gonna do this? Is this really the conversation that we're about to have? The thing that represents
Daddy?
life color-wise is entering into Biggs. Marlene is sensing her father somewhere, and then the petals of yellow flowers make this odd connection between two different places
I'll come back.
so that they can sense each other's presence. And that's about to be represented in the rain
So,
that's coming up
what
here.
now?
Well, God bless the rains down in Africa.
Down in Africa, yeah, that's right.
Sephiroth.
NSP's rendition of Africa is very good, by the way.
It is good. And we're talking
I
about
thought you
Ninja
beat.
Sex Party, not Night Sky Prince. Although, I don't know, maybe Night Sky Prince does a
We can.
good cover
Might
too.
as well. I'll have to ask him next time
We will.
if he can
Count me in.
bless us with
If it's to be a
a
hunt,
rendition.
you could use a nose like
I
mine.
don't know what it is about this line from
I hate it.
13. I love it.
You really do?
I'm into.
I do. It's such a
Master
great
wants to
like. This
destroy
is
the
like
whole
the
planet,
band. This is
doesn't
like
he?
the Lord of the Rings moment
An
where like
enemy of
everybody
Earth
is like
is
in
an
my
enemy of
axe.
Avalanche.
Like this is that moment for Final Fantasy VII. I don't know how that's not just like the coolest thing ever. It's like that's what is it? The Fellowship of the Ring moment.
Mm-hmm. So, from available data, I think it'd be easiest to assume so that what we've walked into is the Terrier timeline now. And the
Almost there, Cloud.
in the Terrier
Almost
timeline,
there.
the whispers have dissolved, or the corrupt whispers have dissolved. So they are not there to save the party. So that explains why there are not two copies of all the characters in the Terror universe. Because those ones died.
They be dead.
I miss it. The steel sky.
I really wish that we had a trailer to explain all of this stuff dropping anytime soon. The Unknown Journey, which
I also-
apparently is swapped out for something else
Yeah.
right at the last second.
Like last minute. Like, what a dick move.
Apparently it wasn't something that they liked to be said at the end of the game, so
It was probably like, prepare for Genesis.
great. Yeah, it was like, and get ready for Loveless. Genesis
E3 is
rolling
happening spring next year, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that there will be something, even if it's like a super like teaser. Like, it would be the place to do something like that.
I think E3 we might see a trailer. I mean, they are hard at work on
Right.
this game.
Yeah.
But I think we'll see something of value this year. in terms of news, and it might coincide with the Ultimania release. But it seems like they're actively trying to get voice work done in a hurry for something, and I think we might get DLC. And
That'd be so weird.
no,
For me,
because
it would be.
I think it would coincide with the exclusivity, right? So, because that's what happened with 15. Is there was a little bit of DLC, but really like the big DLC came out when the PS4 exclusivity ended, and it came out on Xbone and PC. And that was a huge chunk of DLC. And I think that they're probably gonna have it's gonna be a tough sell to just sell the game totally as is with no changes on a different console. So I have a feeling they've been actively trying to create DLC stuff.
I will definitely be interested to see whatever they have to offer, whether it's a trailer for a new part of the game or if it's like DLC. I don't know.
Part of the reason too that I think DLC might be in the works is because they've taken the entire development crew that would normally be patching this. Like, this is 1.0, and I think and put them to work on something. And I have a strong suspicion that is the DLC.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's pretty neat, to be honest. Like, and the prospect of that happening would be awesome. And what it would be really crazy.
Dance minigame.
Before Crisis version, I think. A Crisis Core DLC.
And there's Yuri Lowenthal's name, who, in case you didn't know, is responsible for an absolute hate parade on Twitter, because he is the voice of, well, like everybody. He's one of the most prolific voice actors in the world, and he happens to voice Johnny here, but he is the voice of Peter Parker in the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man games. Oh. And in the PS5 version, which got a remaster for because the Miles Morales Spider-Man game, if you get the deluxe edition, will include the full remastered version of the first Spider-Man game. They remodeled his face, and they remodeled it to make it easier for Yuri Lowenthal. And for whatever reason, that made him look like 14. He's like 14, and it just doesn't make any sense, because like he's supposed to be a mentor for an older looking Miles Morales.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's really weird. But as a result, Yuri Lowenthal, who's, just basically was like, hey, I'm sorry, it's my fault. They just tried to make it look more like me. And he's a 40-year-old man, but they straight up started to tell him he's ugly on Twitter. Like, it was such a just bash fest.
Oh, like, no reason for that.
Yeah.
It's just a voice actor just trying to do his job.
Yeah, man.
And also, people weren't. It's still the same game. Just doesn't look exactly the way you remember it. Still plays the same, right?
I don't know.
Oh God. Well then, 0 out of 10 will not buy.
I think the value of that game is so high. Like that's such a rad thing to do for a launch title, is to like not only to like include the full original game too. So it's like you get 2 games for the price of one. really, I think, a bold move on their part. And that game was so good. I'm not sure if you got a chance to play that game. Oh, I know for a fact you didn't, actually. We've already talked about it. And you said that the last Spider-Man game you played was on PlayStation 2. Oh, you have to pay an extra $20? I'm just assuming that Sleepezi died.
I did.
Oh,
I started
RIP.
to tear up, honestly. I had to really quickly get I'm not even kidding. It's just because I have a fan blowing in my face. I had to get something to wipe my eyes.
Sure.
It's not Jack Quaid tears, and I'm not selling those on eBay later after the stream.
It is sort of an emotional retelling of the story here. You know?
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's the one thing that I thought was so weird. By the way, that Sephiroth doesn't blink. The one where Cloud like hits his sword up against the ceiling.
Yeah, and that's just yeah, he doesn't blink. But I think the reason he doesn't blink is because it's in Cloud's mind.
Yeah,
his mind is like limited. He's got mental deficits, and so he can't render blinking for the characters in his dreams.
That would be a good use of like our energies, wouldn't it, Gene Garcia? Is to like will somebody to get like more work in the industry. I think that's a pretty positive thing. I wonder if he's a fan of the game. We can maybe like do some branding for that later on.
I think if Square is smart, as soon as they heard like Batman, aka Edward Cullen, aka star of the Lighthouse, decide to endorse Final Fantasy VII as like his favorite game and talk about like the death of Aerith as like one of the most important moments in his life, Robert Pattinson, I think if they're smart and they heard that and that got to them, they should definitely approach him. He would make a great Vincent. He'd be an awesome Vincent. And you know what? He'd probably do it for free.
Yeah, I would like if somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to be in the game that you loved so much as a kid and change your life forever for nothing?" I would be like, "Hell yeah, I'll do it."
Yeah. I mean, let's not pretend like you know what it's like to be Robert Pattinson, though.
I only know what it's like to be Jack Quaid. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I let it finally out of the bag.
See, but Robert Pattinson didn't just like use his lineage and his like family connections to become famous. You just like you got nepotized into fame.
Why would you say it to me like that?
I'm just saying, like, he earned it by being in movies he hated with all of his heart for like 5 years, and then like basically like turning down every good role just so he could be in movies he likes.
Jumping into Jack Quaid was in the Hunger Games. Do you know that? Does anybody know that as a fact? That's where he got his movie debut, as he was one of the background characters, one of the like the first kids that gets killed.
Well, you would know, obviously.
Gene Garcia is in the know. I was actually reading like the fact that you were like he went about it the normal way. Gene is a bigger fan of Jack Quaid than I am, and I'm Jack Quaid. So like he's been in a lot of small stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like let's just read your bio, okay? Let's just read it. Like on Jack Henry Quaid is an American actor, the son of actor Dennis Quaid and actress Meg Ryan.
Already, but keep going.
What's that?
I said none of that's true, but keep going. American actor, son of another Quaid. That doesn't make any sense. I'm the first and the last Quaid.
I'm just saying.
There's no Quaid that came before me.
You're aggressively defined by your parents to the point that like I'm looking at a Google image search, and most of them are you with your dad or you with your mom. And by the way,
who else am I
can you
supposed to take to a
tell
party?
your mom to just age gracefully? Like, she doesn't need to spend money. She just be her age.
So I'm glad everybody came out tonight. It's been a real pleasure being here with Baby Seal. If you guys want to see more of Baby Seal, you won't, because I'm gonna get my dad to shut the stream down through my apparently many deep
Your
connection.
nepotism. So, okay, there's got to be people that have no idea what we're saying. I have like zero context for this. And so there was just a joke. Somehow, I don't know, like, how
I
did
think it
this
was
start?
Dean, honestly, that set this up. We were talking about
The boys.
yeah, we were talking about the boys, and I mentioned that I know Jack Quaid briefly, and not even like personally, just like through an acquaintance, essentially.
Yeah, basically, like, he was in your house.
Yeah, he
But
was in my
that wasn't
house
the
for
thing.
brief
That
moment.
wasn't the thing. It was more like, oh yeah, but
I
I
name
grew up
dropped
with
him. Is what we're hinting at here.
you
Is
name
that I
dropped
name
him.
dropped Jack Quaid.
You name dropped him,
And,
and then like you name dropped all these other people that you like grew up around. Like, it just sounded like you're a child actor or something. Like it.
That's right.
Like, oh yeah, Warren Beatty. Yeah, that's his name, right? Like you didn't even remember his full name. It was so casual to you. It was like so nothing to you that like he
That's how
helped
it
you with
is.
a book report. You know.
I mean, honestly, yeah, that's what my life was. And now look at me. I'm in The Boys, so it all worked out for me.
Have you caught up on the second season?
I haven't even touched it. To be 100% frank, it's a show that I watch by myself, and the only
Right.
TV I've been watching.
I know
has
how
been
that is. There's some shows you can't watch with your
significant other.
yeah.
Might not be. That's
Um,
awesome. I'm glad that it's all out there, which is definitely makes it more tempting to just binge
Yeah,
binge
yeah,
watch
you can
them.
get through it all at once now. It is phenomenal this season.
I'm sure it's great. I'm glad
Yeah.
that it is too. So
Yeah, it's no Lovecraft Country, but it's pretty good.
that was thoroughly good.
Have you seen any Lovecraft Country yet?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I have to kill this Dexter season, and I got like 2 other shows like lined up like right after that. So
The Wire.
no.
What's lined up
definitely-
after that?
After I was gonna finish Tiger King. I don't know if I'm gonna be doing
man.
that. I started.
man.
I think I'm done with it, to be honest. Though, like I don't think I need to see much more of it to like kind of.
Did you see the dude kill himself?
Yeah, I did. I saw
Okay,
that part.
you've seen it.
That's I think one of the last episodes that I watched, and I was just like, all right, like this is too heavy, and I'm just trying to relax after like digesting compilation lore for most of my days. I need a cool down show, not
Okay,
more
so
grief
so
and
so
tragedy.
maybe not Tiger King. So what's next?
I think The Witcher actually, because I started that with the lady. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna finish that. I'm gonna finish. Dexter's already gonna be a lot because I have like, and then like 4 more seasons to go of that, and then
Yeah.
by that time, the next part of Showtime will release the Dexter that has yet to be released, and I will officially retire and watch whatever show after that I want. But then it's The Witcher, for sure.
There's some really good shows that you get. Like, Utopia is really good. I strongly recommend that. Both the Haunting series were really good. Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor, really
I heard
good.
those were really good. I heard that I thought that the last one didn't do so well, but I also was just interested in the first one to begin with, and I
Yeah.
heard that one was really great. So, I also was a big fan of Gerald's Game, which I think
Yeah.
is the same person who did that. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm wrong. Very, very excited for that at some point. I don't know when, because that's one of those shows that I think, again, is on like my own watch list at this point. I think actually my girlfriend's already seen it. I don't think I want to make her rewatch it.
Yeah. The Third Day is another one too. I strongly recommend.
Third Day. Okay.
Yeah.
Is
Oh,
that on Netflix?
but very first one you need to watch, Raised by Wolves.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know anything about that.
Actually, Raised by Wolves has a lot of the same kind of
Tiger King vibes.
no symbolisms that Final Fantasy VII does.
Oh, okay. Shit. Then
It is you cannot even guess what it's about based on the title.
That's fantastic.
It's a Ridley Scott show about a future dystopian fate of humanity where they have to repopulate another planet after a war between atheists and the Mithraic, which are the dominant religion, and they program these two androids to raise humans on this planet, but the planet has a much older history than they expected, and then the war follows them, and it's so beyond interesting. But a lot of it is a lot of the story unfolds in sort of a way that it opens up big mysteries, and there's all sorts of little things. It's actually right up your alley in terms of like catching visual themes and letting that help guide how you interpret a story. I think
that's something that I'm like a huge fan of.
Yeah.
So if like I can get any more of that in my life outside of the compilation,
yeah,
which I know that there is a lot of that in other media.
Yeah,
it's definitely a plus one for me.
So I'm gonna raid a stream. So I'm trying to look who's on.
I was actually gonna suggest to you earlier, but I think she stopped streaming. But Sphere Hunter was doing Haunting Ground, which was kind of nice for like a Halloween vibe. But
She's done.
Yeah, she's done.
Oh, we could watch Max Dude play Ghost of Tsushima. You wouldn't even notice the raid. He's got 10.5 thousand viewers. Be like a drop in the bucket.
With that size, yeah, you're probably gonna get something like that. Is Otto still streaming?
No.
Okay. I thought I saw Otto in the chat, but I didn't recognize the username, and I could be absolutely wrong. I'll have to ask later.
Yeah, we'll ask her. It's some spoof account. We start getting spoofers, just people that pretend to be us, like like Awake Hard, and like manual transmission instead of auto ignition, and Heisenberg's adult like corpus.
If I ever reveal my face, that's how I will do it, Gene Garcia. Is I'll get Jack Quaid to stand in. I'll use my many connections.
Well, I can't think of anybody that's worthy of a raid from us, so I'm just gonna call it. But
all right,
it's been fun, and hopefully we can. When do you think you're gonna stream next?
I have a schedule for that now, which is just Monday,
Tuesday,
and Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay. So I will definitely join you on Monday for the stream.
Awesome.
In whatever way you want. I can just help moderate the chat, or if you want somebody to talk to you, I don't care.
I just need you to moderate this guy who keeps coming in the chat called Gene. He's been a real roughhouser, so really hard person to handle.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Just all this Jack Quaid talk.
I don't know who it is, but if you look and find him somewhere, I think that would be nice. Because he really upset me last time, and anytime, yeah, and he upset Gene too, Garcia. Oddly enough, very similar names. But
Well,
anyway, yeah. I mean, if anybody's interested, I'm just playing Final Fantasy VII Monday through Wednesday at 8 Pacific time. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, I'm pretty sure some of you will be there.
yeah.
I saw you in the last stream, and we will see how that goes. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys, I love you all as always, and you guys are always the best. And thanks for chilling with us. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this stream off, but thanks again, guys.
Bye, guys. Love you. Bye.